Chapter 4862. Chun Qing's complexion was extremely serious, and he naturally knew the seriousness of this. The black energy that broke out in the Black Mountain several times before was solved by him. Each time the black energy was extremely small. The most one time, it only swallowed the prisoners and supervisors in the entire Black Mountain. But this time, the eruption of black energy actually swallowed all the creatures in the entire heaven. This shows the severity of the situation. With this in mind, he reminded Jian Wushuangdo, "Brother Sword, those black chi is extremely easy to contaminate the power. Once it is contaminated, it is difficult to remove, so when you get to the place, try not to use the power if you can." Jian Wushuang nodded slightly, looking forward through the void, the heaven plane that faintly reveals dark luck. Stepping into the first heaven of the next 3 days, an indescribable breath of death rushed toward his face. Looking around, there are many mountains and mountains, like the undulating Black Mountain that stretches to the invisible end. The black air, like a dark cloud, swallowed every inch of the space, hazy and chaotic to the extreme. The 4 body shapes all converged and walked forward step by step. Both Xiao Dijuan and Chun Qing showed an unbearable expression, as if they were overwhelmed by some unknown force. But Jian Wushuang's face was indifferent, as if he hadn't been affected in any way. Walking in the soaring sky, the breath of death is lingering. The bones of prisoners everywhere are all lying on the ground, and they all turn into black dust when the wind blows, which is extremely strange. Little monarch, it seems that this first heavenly realm is indeed completely destroyed. Chun Qingning looked forward and said, "In this way, it would be extremely troublesome to find the source." The little emperor who was walking in the front did not speak. He also felt the trouble. This was the first time he encountered this situation. Since he took over the Black Mountain realm in the next 3 days, there hasn't been any bad sign since he took over at a young age, and it has continued to this day. But in the last few Chinese years, black energy began to appear in the Montenegrin realm, and the scope of each appearance was not large, at most spreading to a Montenegro. But today, the black energy that didn't know where it started swallowed a whole heaven, and none of the creatures here survived. At this time, Jian Wushuang, who had not spoken, said, "I think, just along the direction of the prisoners' bodies on the ground, you should be able to find the source." Xiaodijin looked at the prisoner's corpse lying on the ground, like a looming road, stretching far away. "It's not advisable to stay here for a long time. Let's make a quick fight," he said before taking the lead. Because he couldn't use his power, he moved slowly, and the more you move forward, shocking scenes appear one after another. The corpses of the dead prisoners are piled up like a mountain, almost spreading far away. Moreover, the death of these prisoners was very strange. All the clothes on their bodies disappeared, and the exposed bodies became dry bones densely covered with black threads. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. What exactly is the so-called black energy that would have such an impact on living beings? You must know that the prisoners trapped in the Black Mountain are at least half ancestral top repairers. Even if the chain between their necks trapped them, they did not make any resistance moves, which is too weird. Could it be that this black energy has a restraining effect on Yanli? He slowly stretched out his palm, stroking the black energy flowing in the void. The black chi is cold, with a kind of palpitating aura. It seems that it does not seem to belong to the product of this heaven. Retracting their hearts, they kept passing through a mountain of corpses piled up by prisoners' bones. When stepping past the tallest corpse mountain, a black abyss like a deep prison appeared in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Endless black air spit out from the vast and endless abyss. Even if it is Yin Xian, standing in front of this abyss has a very small feeling. The black mountains that had already collapsed were leaning into the abyss, and the abyss was still expanding and stretching, and the prisoners' corpses also fell into it. When is there such an abyss in this first heaven? Chun Qing asked in shock. Xiao Dijuan frowned. It seems that all the black energy is gushing from the depths of this collapsed underground. What shall we do next? Chun Qing asked again. I am afraid that there are only a few of us in such a deep abyss, and it is impossible to reseal it. In the end, Xiao Dijuan shook his head disappointedly. It can only be so. Let's go back now. The weirdness of the first heaven territory in these 3 days was destroyed, so that he did not dare to check it out again. After making a decision, they are ready to leave. But as he turned around, there was a palpitating heart that made Jian Wushuang subconsciously turn his head back. The black energy that was originally thick in the air quietly turned into a vortex and began to rotate slowly. "Run!" he suddenly shouted, reminding. But everything was already too late. Almost at the same time that Jian Wushuang's voice fell, the vortex condensed by the black energy turned crazy. The towering black mountains suddenly broke apart and were sucked into them by the crazy vortex. And Jian Wushuang and others were swallowed by that unimaginable suction for the first time. The dark clouds were connected to the ground, and the entire deadly first heaven seemed to fall under the black abyss prison. Being caught in the vortex, Jian Wushuang only felt a whirl of heaven and earth, and he was extremely passive because he could not run his energy. The condition of the little emperor, the thin purple robe, and Qin Qing were also not much better. They were almost swallowed and disappeared without a trace. Suffocating the dizziness, Jian Wushuang opened his eyes in the vortex. Looking around, there is endless darkness. Yu reading www. Calm. This surging vortex kept falling, and the entire black abyss seemed to never end, without knowing where it led. I don't know how long it took. When a hard and cold touch came from under him, everything seemed to return to silence. The vortex slowly dissipated, leaving only the silent sound around. Oh, his grandma's Lao Tzu's waist. Chun Qing's painful curses resounded under the abyss. The unspeakable reverberation resembled a trembling 9-day booby thunder, blasting in the abyss. Quiet. Xiaodaijian's voice immediately sounded. Standing in this black source, Jian Wushuang's eyes flashed with golden light. Although there was an unknown extremely dark world in front of him, he could still clearly see every inch of the ground and every inch of space. Under this abyss, it is completely composed of strange and irregular rocks that are completely dark and cold. He had already been in close contact with the 4 emperors, and he naturally knew the unique luck of the emperor. But at the moment, this creature does not have the emperor's luck, and there is not even a trace of the fluctuation of the power. All around him, only the horrible black energy was surging. He seemed to have awakened from Wang Gus's deep sleep, and the 2 black lights immediately locked Jian Wushuang several people. Then, the dead creature slowly raised an arm, and the broken palm squeezed hard. Suddenly, the void suddenly collapsed, and the indescribable force squeezed in all directions. Except for Jian Wushuang, Xiao Dijuan, the thin purple robe, Chun Qing and the 3 snorted at the same time, as if they had been severely injured, and the corners of their mouths overflowed with a ray of blood. Damn it, it really gives me energy. Chun Qing's aura was languid, but he didn't dare to release his strength to resist, because that black energy's restraint on Yanli almost reached the point of incomprehension. As long as there is a trace of Yanli released, it will definitely be hit hard by retrieving the original wish. The prisoners and supervisors who have died are the best examples. In such a situation, only Jian Wushuang could turn the tide. The inability to apply Yanli is an unthinkable thing for Yin Xian, because even the simplest urging of Xianyuan will consume Yanli. But Jian Wushuang was affected by this, and it was much smaller. Except for the 2 ancestral arts, and the Xian-style 1-point mountain and river requires derivation, his Wushuang Kendo, Xingahouhai sword intent, and the 2nd celestial style of selfless true shadow, all do not need to be derived. Therefore, he immediately used the true shadow of the selflessness to bless himself to deal with the next situation. After only 1 blow hit Xiaodaijian and the others, the dead creature took a step towards them. The extremely thick black qi was continuously absorbed by him, and then he repaired the hideous and terrifying wounds on his body. Jian Wushuang's heart moved. He cut directly with a sword. Xinghe Lake Heijiani, the first release. The incomparable sword intent rose, swept across, illuminating the entire abyss for a moment, and then slashed towards the figure of the dead creature. The next moment, a scene that no one had expected appeared. The vast sword intent slashed in front of it, and it actually destroyed the body of the dead creature into 2 parts. Everything was too easy, as simple as Jian Wushuang didn't react. and his figure was scattered on the rocks. Just that's it. Chen Qing's eyes were a little dull. Is he vulnerable or brother sword? You are too strong. Jian Wushuang slowly shook his head. He could feel that it was not that he was too strong, but that the dead creature was too vulnerable. He seems to be too old, as if through endless years, making himself extremely weak. Chapter 4864. The extremely rich black energy was still in a whirlpool shape, frantically pouring into the shattered figure that collapsed to the ground. Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijuan looked at each other, then lifted their sword and stepped forward slowly. The shattered figure that had been cut in two was squirming and seemed to be slowly healing and repairing. Brother Jian, we must never let him recover again, Xiaodijan said in a cold voice, then drew out the soft sword from his waist, and after a sword nailed half of his body to the ground, he prevented his recovery. Chen Qing also stepped forward and said in shock, "What kind of thing is this guy? Couldn't it be an immortal who fell on the battlefield for a long time?" Jian Wushuang shook his head and whispered softly, "It will never be a fairy generation. Even if the source of the fairy is broken, the generation of the immortal that persists will have a generation of power fluctuations, but this one does not even have a trace of power fluctuations. That's really weird." Chen Qing scratched his head. Immediately, Jian Wushuang stared at the broken figure again, because he was wearing a completely black and heavy visor, and he couldn't see his face, only two black rays of light projected from his eye sockets, with a certain shocking power. Inexplicably, Jian Wushuang subconsciously stretched out his palm, wanting to take off his visor. "Brother Jian!" Xiaodijan suddenly took his arm. "Be careful." He nodded, then slowly squatted down, reaching out his palm to touch the faceplate of the dead creature. The start was icy cold, and with the sound of a staggered bearing, the complicated and precise visor opened from the nose, and then revealed a face. To be precise, it is a well-preserved and determined face. No one thought that this body was about to turn into a dead soul with withered bones, and it still had such a face. With the unfolding of the complex and precise faceplate, the face of that determined and heroic fighter turned slightly, and finally looked at Jian Wushuang in front of him. At this glance, it seemed to cross the Huanggu Xinghe River, looking back in the long river of time. This glance shocked Jian Wushuang. For a long time, Jian Wushuang said softly, "Everything has passed, and now is no longer in the past." There was some movement on his resolute and heroic face. He opened his mouth and seemed to try very hard to say, "Why in you there is a familiar feeling." As this sound fell, his figure that had been cut in two quickly dissipated, turning into a fluffy ash and disappeared. The face that wrapped that firm and valiant made Jian Wushuang's figure tremble slightly when it was about to dissipate. Because, when the body of the necromancer finally disappeared, he murmured a word silently. "You are not from Dian." Then his figure turned into fly ash with the turbulent black energy. The surging black air dissipated, and the entire unknown abyssal world began to collapse rapidly, and the stone dome above his head began to give birth to fine cracks. "Hurry up, this place is about to collapse," Xiaodijan reminded in a deep voice. The abyss where there was no exit had also cracked a gap not far away. It was an exit. Now that the dark source that destroyed the first heaven in the next 3 days has been eliminated, naturally there is no need to stay here. Xiaodijan and others are all ready to leave. Jian Wushuang also recovered from his thoughts. Finally, he looked at the place where the dead creatures disappeared, and suddenly saw a dark bead lying quietly under the visor. There was a movement in his heart, and he directly stretched out his hand and held it far away, and the black bead fell into his hand even with the visor. "Brother Sword, go, it won't last long here." Chen Qing's voice came from afar. "Here." After Jian Wushuang stuffed the black beads and visor into the Boyang bottle, he flew forward. Since the black energy has completely disappeared, it can naturally run its energy again. With the help of the descendants, the 4 descendants easily rose out of the abyss. When standing on the abyss again, Xiaodijan breathed a sigh of relief without a trace. The source of the black energy that has soaked an entire universe is removed, and all crises are lifted. In the next time, the Black Mountain of the First Day domain will definitely continue to mine. Looking at the Black Mountain community under the hazy misty sky, Jian Wushuang faintly felt that there were still many mysteries that had not been discovered or resolved. The originally tricky thing was solved easily. After leaving for the next 3 days and returning, Xiao Dijuan immediately decided and ordered more than 10 Yangtzeans to drive into Xiaogutian with 20 carts of treasures, all of which were given to Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang did not refuse, and directly let Chen Qing and Cui Jing take over, leaving the good things in the hall, and all the remaining treasures were taken to the Wangu Wushuang auction house. After returning to Xiaogutian from the next 3 days, Jian Wushuang jumped directly onto the top of the eaves and began to think about the meaning of the dark source words. And not long after, the figure of the 3 emperors who had been silent for the first time appeared on their own initiative, all looking at Jian Wushuang with a rather solemn expression. "Little friend, this is no joke." Yang Jun, a tall and thin old man, spoke first, his face full of dignity and alertness. Daogong and Su He also nodded solemnly in agreement. 3 seniors, what is it because of?" Jian Wushuang scratched his head and asked a little embarrassingly. Yang Jun didn't say much and immediately stretched out his hand, and a dark object wrapped in rich and powerful force flew out of the Bo Yang bottle. "It's this thing, where did you get it, little friend?" Yang Jun said seriously. Looking at the black bead that still exudes a weird aura, Jian Wushuang did not hide it, and immediately said what had happened in the next 3 days. In the end he said, "This black bead and that visor were all found from under the abyss. Could this thing have some influence on you?" Yang Jun nodded. "Not only is it influential, but more importantly, we have discovered that this kind of thing can erode God's consciousness and power, even us." A short sentence contained too much information, which shocked Jian Wushuang. Under the abyss, the seemingly vulnerable source of darkness, the black beads produced, can even eat away the Emperor's divine consciousness and power. The Emperor, the highest known master of Jian Wushuang at present, although he did not take the step of Dayan Immortal, even for the 9th-ranked Dayan Immortal, he was easily crushed, and he was the creator of a heavenly court. Chapter 4865. Su He pushed him over, dissatisfied. "I always like to pretend to be a god, it's me. This thing, from the current point of view, actually has little impact on us, but it will be hard to say in the future. It is like an unstable factor, and no one knows what changes will happen to it in a certain day. We have just inspected this bead carefully. It's very weird, so we can't guess what it is. Therefore, if we can throw it away, we should throw it away as soon as possible to avoid severe damage in the future." Jian Wushuang frowned when he heard this. This black bead was extremely jealous of the Emperor, and it was able to kill the prisoners in the entire universe with his own power. It seemed to be an ominous thing. "Little friend." Yang Jun also took a step forward at this moment. "We must take precautions as soon as possible. I have an intuition that this kind of thing can never be as simple as it seems." With the reminder of the 3 emperors, Jian Wushuang also realized the seriousness of this. In this case, it can only be destroyed. As he said, he directly reached out to grasp the floating black beads. "No!" 3 emperors shouted in shock at the same time, as if something terrible would happen in the next moment. But the imaginary scene did not appear. Jian Wu held the black beads in both hands, without any discomfort, looking at him 3 with a look of confusion. "The little friend, listen to me. You must not release the power. This thing is extremely restrained, and if you don't pay attention, it will burn your body." Yang Jun said nervously, but Jian Wushuang still looked puzzled. After the black bead with weird light fell into his hands, it was like a pot of boiling hot water was frozen in ice. Nothing unusual. It seems nothing happened. How could it be okay? The 3 emperors looked at each other. Some of them couldn't believe the scene. Could this bead be eaten by someone? Su He was a little uncertain. Daogong also said, "Anyway, you should dispose of this thing as soon as possible, but you must remember not to throw it away at will, so as not to let the soul suffer." After reminding and mentioning something, Sandy Jun returned to the Boyang bottle. Jian Wushuang nodded, and then carefully examined this strange black bead, trying to find something from it. But apart from the full strength of the surrounding air being completely swallowed by the black beads, There was no other abnormality. The black beads in his opponent were still foggy, but they still found shining points. According to the characteristics of this black bead, if in future battles, when facing a stronger opponent, can the black be released to devour the opponent's power? Will it achieve unexpected results? Jian Wushuang pinched his chin and thought. At this moment, Zai Audijin set foot on Zai Yushin again. After sensing his breath, he stuffed the black beads into his arms, then stood up to meet him. The little emperor, who put on a plain uniform, came to him and said, "Brother Jian, what happened in the next 3 days? If you don't help me, I'm afraid there will be a big trouble." Gong Ziyan thanked him again, and the little gift he prepared earlier. "I hope Brother Jian will not dislike it." "It's okay, it's just a matter of effort." Jian Wushuang waved his hand and said again, "What is the little emperor looking for? Can't you come to Brother Jian to have a heart-to-heart talk?" Zai Audijin smiled bitterly. He shrugged. "Of course you can go sit in the temple together?" Little emperor hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "In fact, Brother Jian, I am here, and I do have important matters to discuss. In less than 3 years, it is my emperor's birthday. Then I would like to invite Brother Jian to go to the heaven with me again. Feast." "Of course." Jian Wushuang nodded. He breathed a sigh of relief. "Brother Jian, young Master Yin thanks again." After a moment of contemplation, Jian Wushuang asked, "Going to heavenly court this time, can I enter Daoshu Pavilion that day?" "Of course there is no problem," Zai Audijin said. "Brother Jian wants to go there to find bone armor?" Jian Wushuang didn't hide it. "Yes, instead of looking aimlessly, it's better to go there and try your luck." "Okay, after those 3 years, I am looking forward to Brother Jian's arrival." Zai Audijin arched his hands again. Back in the hall, Di Qing had awakened from his deep sleep, stretched out to the front of Jian Wushuang, and said, "Looking at your complexion, it seems that you are always on the go, and it's time to rest." Jian Wushuang shook his head. "It's okay, I'm going to leave soon, so you will pay more attention to it." Di Qing raised his brows. "Then Reishizi Zai Audijin really arranged your itinerary fully. Would you like me to teach him something for you?" He couldn't laugh or cry. "Teach him what to do, and you can rest here with peace of mind, and other things will not trouble you." Wei Liujia also stepped forward and said, "Master Jian, I'll go with you, and we can take care of each other." "No, there won't be any twists and turns in the itinerary this time. If there are too many people, things will go wrong." Jian Wushuang shook his head, and then he looked at the empty hall. Chen Qing, Chen Qiu and Cui Jing have been busy at the Wangu Wushuang auction house. But there is one less one in this palace. "Liujia, have you seen Zhao Ting?" he asked. "You mean Zhao Tingguan? I saw her a few days ago, and she disappeared in a blink of an eye." Wei Liujia was also a little uncertain. "But if you want to come, Zhao Tingguan shouldn't go far." Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. If Wei Liujia said it would be okay, I was afraid that Zhao Ting would return to Datushan and informed the son of the situation here. Zhao Ting, the mysterious woman, was the former Datian official next to Gongzi Jiao, and her actions gave people a feeling of incomprehensibility. Even Jian Wushuang could not figure out any thoughts of her now. Therefore, she is still extremely worried. Just when he was about to take advantage of this time to explore the traces of Zhao Ting, she came back quietly. The scars all over her body have not been fully recovered. It seems that she had experienced a battle not long ago. After returning to the hall, she went straight back to her bedroom without talking to anyone. Jian Wushuang didn't have much to say, but he winked towards Di Qing. Di Qingxin understood it, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Don't worry, no one can turn the waves with me." With a flick of his fingers in 3 years, compared to the first visit to the heavenly court, this second time seemed much more low-key. Except for some close confidants, the entire 6-day realm was in a calm state, and it seemed that the news this time had not been publicized. Zhen Wuyang slowly got up, his eyes slowly swept across the emperors. "Moer is dead. I don't want to see any of you again. He will repeat his mistakes. Remember, you are brothers, not blood feuds." All the emperors' complexions changed slightly at this moment, but they quickly returned to normal. But the changes on their faces did not escape Jian Wushuang's observation. Among these emperors, the most fluctuating complexion was not the Sun Jiao, but the Sun Yu of the three emperors. He appeared very flustered, and soon returned to calm again. For a moment, the son of the four emperors, Sun Qian, flashed a gloating look in his eyes. The son of the sixth emperor, Sun Hua, and the son of the seventh emperor, Sun Lin, were a little sad. As for the mastermind assassin Gong Zijiao, there was no expression at all, and even the sadness in his eyes from time to time, which made Jian Wushuang have some opinions on him. After the drastic changes that have taken place before, combined with the current emotional changes of Gong Zijiao, this is undoubtedly an extremely terrifying opponent. In the future, he will inevitably have a fierce battle with Xiao Dijuan. And if that day comes, I'm afraid it's time for this big division to reshuffle the cards. He sat back on the emperor seat and patted the warm jade handrail lightly. This emperor position can be done by anyone, but the emperor's luck is not something everyone can have. There is only one emperor in this big division. Withdrawing his gaze, Zhen Wuyang seemed to be a lot older at this moment. If you say it all, you all need to do it yourself. All the emperors gave their hands. I follow the emperor's teachings. However, Emperor Zhen Wuyang immediately said, I call you here this time, and there is one more thing to tell you. I need to leave the Desai domain for a while, so you can do it for yourself. All the emperors were startled, obviously a little disbelief. Since the establishment of the Great Siyu and the moment when the heavenly court is settled, Emperor Zhen Wuyang has never left the Big Siyu since then, and it has not been known how many years. Right now, he left the Siyu at this point in time, leaving all the emperors unpredictable. Father, where are you going? Little Emperor asked. An unknown place. Zhen Wuyang's deep gaze looked into the distance, not knowing what he was thinking. This training in the name of birthdays lasted for a very short period of time, and even ended without even half a day. This is something Jian Wushuang didn't expect. Zhen Wuyang and Uncle Yu left first. For a time, in the entire heavenly court, only 6 emperors and their cronies looked at each other. Jian Wushuang sat motionless in the same place, but at least 2 eyes were locked on him. One gaze is Gong Zijiao, and the other is Gong Ziyu. He remained calm, and returned with a calm look. Whether in the great heaven, or in the former heavenly court of the 6 crow emperors, Jian Wushuang had his face transformed, and even his body shape had been adjusted, almost completely different from his original self. Hugh said it was them, and even Chuanxiu, who had been around for the longest time, couldn't tell. Regarding this point, Jian Wushuang is extremely certain. Sure enough, the young man corrected the sharp gaze that was as sharp as a knife, and soon disappeared, and then revealed a touch of doubt that was uncertain. This master craftsman is named Su Tuo. He lives in Swordsman Mountain, and has the ability to reach the sky and the earth. Su Tuo. Jian Wushuang murmured and repeated again, feeling that the name was a bit familiar. Immediately, he suddenly thought that he had heard the name of the master craftsman Su Tuo, as early as the master's correction. At that time, the first master of the blessed land under the seat of the Sun Jiao, he once presented a handle of avoiding the clear wish cast by the craftsman Su Tuo, which is very ingenious. Jian Wushuang looked at Zai Audijin and said, It seems that after this time, I will go to Sansuan Mountain to find Su Tuo. He nodded. I will go with you then. It was a pity that he couldn't find the bone armor with the heavenly character pattern in the Tiandao Book Pavilion anymore. But I got another news, which also pointed out a new way for Jian Wushuang. Stepping out of the Tiandao Book Pavilion, Zai Audijin stood under a green tree and drew a cloud of celestial clouds in his hand, turning into a crane. This is my emperor's first birthday. No matter what, I have to send a gift. He seemed to be talking to Jian Wushuang, or to a crane, and then placed a delicate small box on the back of the crane. Go! I must hurry to send the gift before my emperor leaves to see you. With the departure of the crane, Zai Audijin put on a gesture of inviting. Brother Jian, let me walk around here. Jian Wushuang nodded, and traveled in the heaven together. Since my emperor has demarcated the boundary of the Great Division, and established the heavenly court, He has not left the Great Division again, but he has left at this time now, and brought us together to warn him. Can Brother Jian see my emperor's intentions? Little Emperor looked at him and asked. Jian Wushuang pondered for a moment, and then said, the purpose and the possibility of doing this, I think there are two. The first possibility is that he uses the excuse of leaving to test whether you brothers will really let go. Fight each other with hands and feet. As for the second possibility, he really left to see you for a period of time, because of important things, not a short period of time, and will take away all the elders. So he has no time to worry about what will happen to see you in the future. Come to warn you about the matter. After listening to Xiaodigen, he took a deep breath, and his eyes suddenly became extremely solemn. Brother Jian, once it is the second possibility, then the fight between us will probably begin at this moment. Jian Wushuang raised his brow slightly. If it is the first possibility, wouldn't it be in the arms of your emperor? I'm afraid this time, it will only be the second possibility, Xiaodigen said in a condensed voice. The battle between us seems to be much faster than imagined. He said, looking at Jian Wushuang. My strength was originally relatively weak among the other 6 emperors. Whether or not to fight in the future, improving strength will be an urgent matter. I can't wait any longer. Otherwise, the fate of young Master Mo will definitely be my fate. Little Dijuan took a deep breath and solemnly said, Brother Jian, if there is a way, do you want to be in the position of Dian Immortal? Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4868. A short sentence, like the 9 heavens' thunder, exploded in Jian Wushuang's mind. The position of Dian Immortal, once entered this realm, is the real beginning. Feel the luck of the emperor, compete for the throne. Everything is in the realm of Dian Fairy. Similarly, if you want to be promoted to Dian Immortal, the difficulty of cultivating is far beyond imagination. This is no longer something that can be made in years, but it needs illusory luck and opportunity to add to it. It is possible to break through to that state. Countless immortals have spent their endless lives, but they can only be trapped in despair in the realm of immortals. The most typical example is Chen Qing. Even though he has understood the immortal style, he still hasn't touched that barrier, so that breaking through Dian Immortal is an unimaginable luxury. Seeing him being silent, Xiao Dijuan repeated it again. Brother Jian, do you want to enter the realm of Dian Immortal? The reason why Jian Wushuang didn't answer was because if he agreed, there would be too much involvement. In layman's terms, it is to eat people's mouths softly, and take people's hands softly. This is an unbreakable truth. Dian Immortal realm cannot be promoted so easily. Jian Wushuang frowned slightly. As long as you nod your head, Brother Jian, I'm 99% sure that you will be able to ascend the place of Dian Immortal. Little Dijuan said seriously. Seeing the doubt in his eyes, Xiao Daijan's eyes flashed with sadness, and then said, the reason why I am so sure is because a veteran under the emperor's seat turned his lifelong perception into inheritance. In the heaven realm, waiting for Yu Yanxian to accept its inheritance. Because my immortal body is defective and unable to practice, I can only spend my life in the realm of evolving immortals, and naturally I cannot obtain that inheritance. But now I can't wait any longer. There must be a Dian Immortal in the 6-day realm, to be able to keep it in the next fight, he said, reaching out and tightly holding Jian Wushuang's arm. I try my best. Jian Wushuang finally responded. Xiaodigen smiled as if relieved. Okay, then I will do my best to wish Brother Jian to be promoted to the position of Dian Immortal. Leaving from the heavenly court, the two of them went straight back to the 6-day realm. The former veteran under the seat of Zhen Wuyang was the peak of the 9th rank, the realm of Dian Immortal, and spent his life with true Wuyang in all the heavens. Even the same state Dian Immortal was worried about falling away when facing him. I learned from the little emperor that such a Dian Immortal had died voluntarily. He voluntarily dispersed to the fairy source, shattered the fairy body, leaving only the inheritance left in the 6-day realm. But just before the death, he said quietly, and after it was really boring he fell. Listening to his constant introduction, a gradually plump and fleshy image of Dian Immortal appeared in Jian Wushuang's mind. He even wanted to meet this very character Dayan Immortal, the 9th-ranked Dayan Immortal whose name is unknown. His inheritance was left in the 3rd heaven in the next 3 days, and was never known to outsiders. Only Xiaodajin knew about it. After another year of returning home, Jian Wushuang finally returned to the 6th-day realm. Under Xiaodajin's guidance, the two of them went straight to the 3rd heaven domain of the next 3 days without stopping. As the enchantment ripples around his body, the sight of the 3rd heaven came into his eyes. The sea, the black sea, the endless black sea. As the night is condensed on the earth, the completely black color seems to be able to absorb any light, making the entire 3rd heaven a little chaotic. Along with the endless black sea, there are towering black mountains leaning in this black sea. Strange, dead, and deserted are the main colors here. Here is the heritage of the veteran. Xiaodajin pointed to the front and said, "Since the 3rd heaven is almost entirely covered by the Black Sea, it has become difficult to mine the Black Mountain spar. So after this heaven was taken over by me, no one else has set foot. Stay the same until today." Jian Wushuang nodded. "Where will his inheritance be?" "It looks like it's in the Mingyuan continent. I have forgotten it after too long. Let's check it out first," Xiaodajin said with a slightly embarrassed expression. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and threw out a clear light, which turned into a wooden boat and stood still in the Black Sea. "This miasma easily affects our minds. Let's go by boat and be safer." After the two stepped into the wooden boat spontaneously broke through the sea and drove forward. Before that veteran decided to pass on all his insights to me before he decided to die, I was born with flaws, unable to practice cultivation, and unable to possess immortal roots, so naturally I couldn't get his inheritance. Sitting in the wooden boat, Xiao Dijuan calmly told Jian Wushuang, even with a slight smile, "You are the only one who knows that I am flawed, apart from my big companion and those so-called brothers." Jian Wushuang looked at him. "Why do you want to tell me this? You can keep outsiders from knowing." "Of course I am trying my best to hide this secret. After all, the fact that the great emperor of Zhenwuyang is a trash that cannot be practiced will spread, and the impact will be very bad. But I want to confide these words that are about to rot in my heart to others," Xiaodajin said with a smile. "Brother Jian, you are also the only friend I want to confide in." "Thank you, I will always keep this secret." Jian Wushuang nodded and said solemnly. He said again, "This secret is my biggest weakness. Anyone who knows it can easily hit me hard. I can't practice. Even if I am immortal, even if I master the immortal style, I can't conceal the fact that there is no immortal root and no immortal source. Everything I have now is only given to me by my emperor with a secret method, so the immortality is my limit. Even in this lifetime, there is absolutely no possibility of breakthrough. I thought I would fall in this time of assassination, but your arrival, Brother Jian, gave me hope," Xiaodajin solemnly said. "So in any case, I will also welcome you to the position of Dayan Immortal within this period of time." Jian Wushuang didn't speak. He was thinking about a problem just now. From Xiaodajin's performance and mouth, it was known that his fairy body did have a lot of defects, and he was born unable to condense the roots of the fairy, the source of the fairy. This is a fatal place. In layman's terms, it is simply a waste body that is inherently unable to practice. But at the same time, what makes Jian Wushuang somewhat uncomprehending is that such a waste body has achieved the position of evolving the immortal and mastered the immortal style, which is simply incredible. Based on this, he was thinking about whether he could open up another road, a road of practice that is very different from ordinary practice. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4869. It's just that the creation of another cultivation system, for Jian Wushuang now, is tantamount to a fantasy. It is something that can't be imagined at all, and even the starting source can't be realized. However, there was a path of reverse cultivation ahead that allowed Jian Wushuang to think about this boldly. What is Dayanhuan's cultivation system complete? And can he realize a different path from before? The wooden boat traveled extremely fast, breaking through the water in this Black Sea. The black water in the Black Sea is more viscous, just like some kind of mucus, and can feel a lot of resistance. The so-called Mingyuan continent is the only continent in the third celestial domain, and it is also very likely to be the inheritance of the elder who volunteered to fall. With the continuous advance, the black mountains in the Black Sea gradually decreased, and the sea area began to become as smooth as a mirror. The waters of Rimo are connected to the sky of chaos, with a flat boat in the middle breaking through the water. When land appeared in the eyes, it indicated that the only piece of Mingyuan continent would arrive. One step from the wooden boat to the land, the continent made of jagged rocks came into view. This endless continent seems to have also been infiltrated by black water, becoming black and rough, and there are hideous and convex rocks everywhere. Even the tall weeds are black. The inheritance should be here. Although he disperses to Xianyuan, he must still have obsessions here. By then I will personally guide it, and it will definitely succeed, Xiaodagen said in a concrete, while taking the lead and moving forward. The entire Mingyuan continent was extremely vast, but compared with the inheritance perception of a 9th-ranked Great Yin immortal, it was fundamentally inferior. So the first time he set foot on the mainland, Jian Wushuang felt a majestic and exuberant aura of strength. He didn't even need to look for Xiaodagen, he locked a place. It was a place of heaven and danger, and there were 8 black mountains that looked like swords and swords. In the very center of the mountain, there is a halo of quintessence to the extreme. It seems to be there, let's go, Xiaodagen said, soaring forward. Under the mountain and river, Jian Wushuang came to the Yanli halo in an instant. The light beams of various colors are intertwined in it, and the countless rainbow shadows are in the beginning of the cycle. And the brilliance that is only revealed seems to be engulfing the atmosphere of ruining the world. Xiaodagen took a deep breath and said, "It seems that this is the inheritance and perception of the elder, Brother Jian. Can you feel the difference? It's a feeling beyond the realm of evolving immortals," Jian Wushuang affirmed. With Di Qing, the rank 9 Dian immortal by his side, Jian Wushuang had some familiarity and understanding of the realm of Dian immortal. At the moment this group of Yanli halo, he can be sure that it is not weaker than Di Qing. In this case, I am waiting for the good news from Brother Jian. Xiaodagen smiled. However, Jian Wushuang didn't have much excitement, because he felt that this seemed a bit too hasty. He is just the pinnacle of immortal yen, but he wants to comprehend the inheritance of sentiment that controls the ninth-ranked Great Yin immortal, which spans nearly a big realm. And I am afraid that some accidents will happen. But now the arrow is on the line and I have to send it. Seeing that group of Yanli light group exuding brilliance, Jian Wushuang slowly stretched out his palm to fit it, and at this moment, a strange aura in that group of Yanli light made him suddenly vigilant. That kind of strange breath showed a black color. Although it was only a flash, it still made Jian Wushuang want to take back his palm subconsciously. The sudden change occurred almost at the same time when he retracted his palm. The Yanli light ball deformed. Suddenly more than 10 black and gorgeous lights were swept out, and it was attached to his arm, and then dragged it into the light ball. The whole process didn't even have a breath time, and Jian Wushuang disappeared without a trace. The little emperor on the side also reacted, reaching out to grab him, but was dragged in by the huge force. The gang wind raged and raged, and the Black Sea in the entire third heaven was restlessly restless, and set off a huge wave that was 10,000 feet high. Jian Wushuang only felt a burst of uncontrollable great power, dragging him into a certain area, and then the scene in front of him also changed drastically. The rocks at the foot are no longer, replaced by a vast square like a chessboard. And right in front of this vast square is a magnificent and depressing giant hall. Jian Wu's double-face color is extremely solemn, and all the breath radiating here is dark and cold, full of a sense of killing. This is not like the place where the inheritance is located, but rather like the Shura field where a party is fighting. Xiaodagen was also involved here, full of doubts. "Brother Jian, where is this place?" He walked quickly to Jian Wushuang and asked. Jian Wushuang whispered, "We are all involved in the Yanli light group, and it is very likely that we are in a certain area now." Little Emperor said uncertainly, "Could it be in the cave sky left by the veteran? If this is really the veteran's cave sky realm, I am afraid he is definitely not a good person. Jian Wushuang's eyes gradually became solemn. This is not a place of inheritance, but a trap. Trap? He was startled. No, when the elder was still alive, he treated me extremely well, and even asked the emperor to be my big companion. He would never harm me. You don't know if it hurts or not. How the immediate priority is to leave here unharmed. Jian Wushuang said, already operating secretly. Right here. The magnificent and depressing hall suddenly opened the door, and a hurricane rose from it. The pitch-black hurricane rolled over in an instant, bringing a sensational trend. Jian Wushuang also used ancestral skills in an instant. The heavenly gate of the power world rises magnificently, like hundreds of rounds of big sun, descending from the heavenly gate. A huge finger across the sky also directly blocked the dark hurricane, but just blocked it for a moment, and it fell apart. Go! Jian Wushuang shouted, but it was too late, and the unstoppable hurricane swept directly. However, the imaginary pain did not strike, and the hurricane quietly stopped in front of Jian Wushuang. No further progress. Jian Wushuang quickly retreated more than 10 feet before staring. The hurricane that stopped was several meters high, and after the layers of ashes peeled off, a black-robed figure gradually condensed. It was an old man in a black robe with extremely black beard and hair. Chapter 4870. Jian Wushuang slowly backed away, and the invisible sword had quietly gathered. At the moment, the height of this man is more than several meters tall, like an old man walking out of the black fog. There is no power surging in his body, but the general trend that is emitted does not dare to be underestimated. He also had some understanding. Although this old man did not show up, he might not lose sight of the confrontation with Di Qing, and he might even reach a tie. At this time, Xiao Dijuan stepped forward and stood in front of Jian Wushuang, and said 2 words in a nervous voice. Yuan Jun? Huh? The black-robed old man stared at Xiaodijan, a color of doubt flashing in his eyes. I am young Master Yan. Xiaodijan added. The black-robed old man's eyes suddenly condensed. You are Yanzi? Xiaodijan breathed a sigh of relief, then smiled bitterly. It's me. I thought Yuan Jun forgot about the kid. Good boy, it has become like this since the beginning. The black-robed old man suddenly disappeared before condensing in front of him. His eyes could not stop showing joy. Seeing this scene, Jian Wushuang also secretly breathed a sigh of relief, and put away the invisible sword. Avoiding a battle that will pay a great price. This kind of result is naturally good. Xiaodijan scratched his head. The years are too long. If I didn't remember what Yuan Jun you looked like when I was young, I am afraid I will be in trouble today. The old man called Yuan Jun looked up and smiled, and then said, You don't need to worry about me, you guys. Even if you don't remember what I look like, I will always remember your appearance. The kid understands. Xiaodijan also smiled. Well, since you come to see my old bone, then go sit in my hall first. Yuan Jun said with a wave of his sleeves. Xiaodijan nodded, and immediately looked at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang shook his head without a trace. A vigilance flashed in his eyes. He smelled a bit of danger from the open hall, and if he rushed in, he might encounter an uncontrollable crisis. This is... Yuan Jun cast his gaze towards Jian Wushuang. Xiaodijan hurriedly added, This is my best friend, Brother Jian. Yuan Jun nodded. Since I am a close friend of Boy Yan, I will not expel air for the time being. Let's come in together. After the words, he was in the shape of a fog, drifting towards the hall. Seeing him leave first, Jian Wushuang looked at Xiaodijan, frowning slightly. Do you know how much do you know about him, and how many things he is hiding from you? Xiaodijan was a little dumb, and said after a moment, Yuan Jun was one of the only elders who followed me closely when I was young. Although he soon explained himself to Xian Yuan, I always knew his care for me. If not, he will not leave the inheritance to me either. As he said, he stretched out his palm and placed it on Jian Wushuang's shoulder. Brother Jian, believe me once, Yuan Jun will never be malicious to us. Jian Wushuang opened his mouth, but finally did not speak. The 2 figures immediately entered into the giant hall of the formidable. What he didn't say was actually quite important. If it was Xiaodijan's words, Then Yuanjun had died of self-understanding of the immortal source, leaving only a trace of obsession. Then the situation now is completely different from what he said. Yuanjun has no body at all. In other words, his fairy source is very abundant so far. And the figure that appears is not his last obsession, but a truly unbroken fairy body. This is why Jian Wushuang would hesitate. After all, facing a concealed and extremely powerful existence, being vigilant is the correct performance. As soon as he stepped into the giant hall, the dark aura disappeared a lot. The first thing that catches your eyes is the elegant pavilions, not the solemn and cold halls. Boy Yan, come here and go fishing with the old man. On a vacant pitch-black fairy pavilion, Jun Yuan was sitting on the top of the eaves, holding a fishing rod as a gesture. Come here, Zai Audijin answered, and stepped onto the fairy pavilion with Jian Wushuang. After handing him a fishing rod, Yuan Jun looked at Jian Wushuang and said, Boy, do you like fishing? Jian Wushuang nodded and said, It's okay. I was addicted for a while when I was killing time. That's good, it's a good seedling that can calm your mind. After throwing a fishing rod to him, Yuan Jun caught the fish enthusiastically. Xiao Dijuan was sitting in the center and wanted to ask some questions, but he didn't know how to speak, hesitated. It was Yuan Jun who spoke first. Boy Yan, can Emperor Zhenwuyang change now? Zai Audijin replied, My father is still the same. After he claimed to have established the Desiyu, he settled down and lived in heavenly court. That's good, his mission is completed, it's time to take a break. Yuan Jun nodded when he heard the words. Go ahead, why do you think of seeing me? That. Zai Audijin scratched his head awkwardly. I originally wanted to come here to accept the inheritance. When Yuan Jun heard this, he hurriedly looked at him carefully. Boy Yan, is your immortal body better? No, the defect is still there, and I still can't practice. After my father used the secret method to promote me to Yin Xian, I can't make any further progress. Little Emperor said. Damn, you belong to the Emperor's bloodline, how could this happen? Yuan Jun frowned. Could it be that there is no chance to change? Yuan Jun, I have accepted it. My father has nothing to do. It looks good now. Zai Audijin said with a light smile. And the reason why I came is not for myself, but for Brother Jian accept the inheritance of Yuan Jun. Upon hearing this, Yuan Jun looked at Jian Wushuang again. For him? Yes, I'm just an immortal who can't practice. Without the protection of Brother Jian, I would have fallen through assassinations. As he said, he listened to Yuan Jun about the intricate relationship between the emperors. In the end, he said quietly, In our generation, we'll only stop fighting by killing. Yuan Jun was silent, stretched out his hand and patted Zai Audijin's shoulder lightly. I have suffered you, but my heritage is gone. Zai Audijin didn't understand his meaning, his eyes were puzzled. If you came to accept my inheritance after I destroyed Xian Yuan in the first place, then you can see it naturally, but everything has changed right now, Yuan Jun sighed. Despite everything that happened, even me unexplainable, but it actually happened. Jian Wushuang also pricked his ears at this moment. He knew that Lord Yuan was about to reveal the real secrets. The so-called Xianxian, and even Dianxian, are nothing more than the word Xian Yuan in the end. Xian Yuan is the true root, and it is complementary to the roots of the immortal. It is the most important thing for the development of immortals. Chapter 4871. Yuan Jun paused when he said that, and slowly stretched out his left palm. An array of pure strength was condensed. After Emperor Zhenwuyang established the Desai territory, the conquests and killings stopped, which made me feel bored. I destroyed the source of immortality, and only wanted long sleep. Whether it is the external force destroying the Xian Yuan or self-destroying the Xian Yuan, it is an irreversible wound. I successfully broke the Xian Yuan, and naturally I will fall irreversibly. My self-destruction was very thorough. Apart from leaving a legacy for you, I didn't even leave a point for obsession. So my spiritual consciousness also withered and fell into emptiness. But my fall seems to be a little different. Although my divine consciousness is withered, it seems to be tirelessly awakened by some power. It's just that I don't know how many Chinese years have passed. The original shattered and shattered divine consciousness recovered. I woke up, and at the same time, I was surprised to find that even Xianyuan had condensed again. After that, I fully recovered, but because I was tired of the great world, I simply stayed here until I see you again today. The voice stopped abruptly at this point. The amount of information contained in such a remark is not much, but the mystery is at the extreme. Even Jian Wushuang is a little confused. Self-destroying the source of immortality, immortal body. This is an irreversible trauma. Xiao said that it is an ordinary Dian immortal. Even with the truth of the 9 true lives, I dare not play like this. Except for Jian Wushuang, who had no source of immortality and possessed an immortal body, he dared to give it a try. Moreover, it is obvious that the 2 special cases do not exist for Yuan Jun, and the resurrection of the resurrection naturally seems a little confusing. A sense of loss flashed in the depths of Xiaodigen's eyes, but he smiled. It seems that you are the Yuan Jun who is inexhaustible fortune. To live this time again, you should stop doing stupid things and pursue a higher realm. Yuan Jun smiled and nodded. Listen to you. Since my luck is inexhaustible, the old man will go after the great road. After chatting for a long time, the little emperor was about to leave. Boy Yen, I can't leave this place yet, but if you have a big crisis, I will definitely come to help. Yuan Jun said solemnly. Little emperor nodded. Okay, if there is such a day then, the kid will definitely come to invite Yuan Jun. The security of a 9th-ranked Dian immortal is extremely heavy. Jian Wushuang also understood at this moment that Emperor Zhen Wuyang had arranged several Dian immortals beside each emperor. There is a black-robed Dian immortal under the fallen young master Mo seat, and at the same time there is a true meaning. There is also a Nineth-ranked Dian immortal Changfu next to Gong Zizhio, and there is a Yuan Jun beside Xiaodigen. Then, the other emperors must also be accompanied by Dian immortals, and once a war starts with each other, it would be extremely tragic. After speaking, the 2 of them were ready to leave, but at this moment, Yuan Jun suddenly called Jian Wushuang. That kid, did you leave in such a hurry? Jian Wushuang stopped, with some doubts in his eyes. Although my inheritance has disappeared, this does not hinder my hand-to-hand inheritance. Yuan Jun said proudly after throwing away the fishing rod in his hand. I also have a good eye for you, so just stay and let me teach it. Xiaodigen heard the words, and a touch of surprise appeared in his eyes. Brother Jian, thank Yuan Jun soon. Unexpectedly, Jian Wushuang shook his head. Forget it, senior. Although inheritance can be greatly changed in a very short time, it will also have some drawbacks. I still feel it myself. You look down on the old man. Yuan Jun's voice condensed, and he danced without wind in a black robe. Since you are a good friend of Boy Yen, then I will do my best to cultivate you. You must agree or disagree. And if you disagree, you must agree. That's it. After he finished speaking, he stretched out his hand and grabbed Jian Wushuang without any defense directly to a dojo. Xiaodigen was excited with his boxing palm, as if he was more happy than he got the inheritance. On the vast dojo, like a chessboard, Jian Wushuang's figure stood still, and he had obviously accepted the reality. On the opposite side of him, Yuan Jun stood with his hand holding his hand, full of a sense of stubbornness. Boy, let me ask you, how long have you been in the realm of immortality? Jian Wushuang raised his brows. From divine power universe to Dianhuan, he reached the top of the ancestor level and became the eternal god. And now he has become an immortal. It took less than tens of thousands of years. Thousands of years, when replaced by the Taoist supremes in the divine power universe. They are just a few sessions of retreat and enlightenment, let alone the evangelists who have transcended the heavens and are measured in Huanyan. Time and years are no longer meaningful to them. But it does take time to prove it, if you want to measure the qualifications of a top cultivation or an immortal. In order to avoid unnecessary troubles, Jian Wushuang directly swallowed thousands of years into his stomach and casually ridiculed a Chinese year that was about the same age as Xiao Dijuan. Yuan Jun heard the words and nodded. It's not bad. At such an age, he is indeed a plastic talent. If you want to be in the same era as me, you will definitely become a great Yinxian now. I can give you very few things, and I can't even teach you anything, he said simply. But because I promised Yanzi, I decided to grit my teeth and teach you. But you have to promise the old man one thing before this. I will not be by his side in the future. You must protect him in any case. Jian Wushuang heard this, and after a moment of silence he slowly shook his head. I'm sorry that the younger generation can't agree. Xiao Dijuan, who was smiling and watching this scene outside the dojo, was stunned, and even the eyes of Yuan Jun became cold for a moment. Why? Because juniors cannot stay in the big division for a long time. I have a lot of important things to solve, so I can't agree to it. What an arrogant kid. Do you know who you are bargaining with? Yuan Jun danced wildly behind him, and the general trend of the ninth-ranked Dian Immortal was instantly overwhelmed. Yuan Jun, keep your hands. The little emperor who was outside the dojo hurriedly rushed to block Yuan Jun's general trend. Don't stop me, let me frustrate this junior's spirit first, he said angrily. Yuan Jun, there is nothing wrong with what he said. We actually said something before. Xiaojin smiled reluctantly. It is unfair to him to let him protect me from now on. Chapter 48-72. Yuan Jun was dissatisfied. It's only 70 years? My breathing effort is longer than this. 70 years for me now is enough to do a lot of things, Xiaojin said. This will be a node, and many things will happen in this period of time. This 70 years will be the time to lay the foundation, and the value is immeasurable. That's not okay, Yuan Jun said in a grumpy voice. For the sake of only 70 years, I have to work hard to cultivate a great Yanxian. It is really not worthwhile. At this time, Jian Wushuangdo said, predecessors, training and inheritance are actually unnecessary. No, you have to accept the old man's inheritance. In the end, Yuan Jundao said, on the basis of the original 70 years, I want you to protect Xiaojin 5 times in the future no matter where you are. After pondering for a moment, Jian Wushuang nodded, yes. After some bargaining it led to the final result. Xiaojin smiled and left with the excuse of something in the 6th heaven realm. But when he turned around, there was loneliness in his eyes. There were only 2 figures left in the huge dojo. From the beginning of the development to the development of the immortality, it is actually a harsh screening. As far as my perception is concerned, that is the real threshold. It is the real test of starting from nothing and getting the Tao from the world. And the higher realm of Dian Immortal, in my perception and cognition, is actually like a clear spring letting it go. What I want to say is that those who are trapped in the realm of evolving immortals and unable to break through to the Emperor are all stupid idiots, and stupid idiots with heads on their ass. Yuan Jun scolded him a lot, and added another sentence at the end. Of course Xiao Dijuan is an exception. He is unable to practice because of the lack of luck in the first place. In short, it's just one sentence. Anyone who has enlightenment will never be trapped in the realm of the fairy and unable to break through. Now you come to tell me, how do you want to break through to Dian Immortal and rely on my inheritance? Jian Wushuang raised his head and said calmly, let's go with the flow. It's good to go with the flow, Yuan Jun sneered. Do you know how I broke through Dian Immortal? He said, end the struggle with war, endless killing. Yuan Jun was startled slightly, and then admired, the eyesight is good. It took me a very short time to go from Yanxian to Dianxian. There was almost no Chinese year interval in between. But during this time, the number of Yanxian who fell in my hands was no less than 100,000. Even the Dianxian was close. Hundreds. One of the inheritance I give you now is Yanxian in a short period of time, and transfer a part of the fairy source to your own use. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and his heart was slightly stunned. This is to teach the way of killing. I am afraid that his own big killing will increase a lot. But before that, I'm ready to hammer you, Junior. Yuan Jun shouted in a cold voice, and at the same time he was in the shape of electricity, crushing it with the world. A touch of bitterness appeared at the corner of Jian Wushuang's mouth, and this fight seemed inevitable. But it is not easy for him to compromise. Even if it is an existence that is a level higher than himself, he dares to collide. Probing forward with the invisible sword in his hand, While the sword intent of the Xinghe Lake burst out, the fairy-like mountains and rivers were also covered. The true shadow of the selflessness was blessed for an instant, and the most gorgeous blow broke out. The worst battle began on the chessboard dojo. In the entire third heaven, the Black Sea was tumbling violently. Coming out of the next 3 days, the thin purple robe first met the pale-faced little emperor, and draped the cloak on him. His Royal Highness, there have been some changes in the six-day realm. Chapter 4873. Wei Liujia, who was sitting by the side, slowly opened his eyes, looked around and said, "Then shall we go to be the leader?" Zhao Ting did not speak, but looked at Cui Jing, Chen Xiu, and Di Qing, who was in a big sleep, and found that they didn't mean to go to help at all. In the end, she couldn't help but said, "Aren't you going to help?" "Help? What can I do for you?" After Cui Jing delivered the news, the monkey eagerly took a fairy fruit from the case, then leaned on the pillar and ate it leisurely, and muttered again, "It's not that Brother Jian has something wrong, and what other people have to do with us." Zhao Ting wanted to speak, but after looking around, he finally swallowed the words. She only understood now that all of these men were only looking at Jian Wushuang. Even as the master of the six-day realm, the little emperor was not in their eyes. Don't they fear that the sun will get angry and attack them? Zhao Ting thought about it, but he quickly negated the idea. Except that Jian Wushuang and Xiao Dijuan had an inexplicable relationship, just a mysterious truth. They all captured people to the extreme. Zhao Ting had an intuition that the Gongzi Jiao's diffusion had been destroyed more than half, which definitely had a direct relationship with Diqing. At the moment, if you want to bring all of these onto the battlefield, I am afraid that only Jian Wushuang can come. She simply stopped worrying about these nostalgias, and continued to sit up with her eyes closed. After all, even if the entire 6 days had fallen, there were Jian Wushuang and the others in front of them. "I want your lives." With the sword squeezed out, repelling the digital fairy, Xiaodijan's whole body was surging with strands of black and white intertwined aura, with an irresistible force. That was his unique immortal style, and he could fight against the sun. Once Yanxian understands the immortal style, it is equivalent to touching the realm of Dianxian with one hand, and it is like a crushing existence for ordinary Yanxian. The dozens of immortals led by the thin purple robe, at this moment, under the protection of more than 100,000 top repairers, suffered the smallest losses. But countless repairs are decreasing at a speed visible to the naked eye, facing the encirclement and suppression of more than 200 Yanxian. Even 100,000 top repairers have collapsed. Immediately afterwards, with Chen Qing joining the battle, he abruptly resisted a wave of unstoppable shocks. "His Royal Highness, leave it to me here," Chen Qing shouted in a deep voice, his strong Yanli blocking more than 10 Yanxian behind him. "Behind is the six-day realm. Where can I retreat, tell me?" Xiaodijan said angrily. "Today is all killed in battle, don't even think of taking a step back." Chen Qing was the first to follow Xiaodijan. How could he not know his disposition? He said that fighting hard, it is absolutely impossible to take a step back. But the current situation is obviously coming from the six-day destruction realm. How can it be blocked? Except for that existence. Thinking of this, Chen Qing hurriedly said, "Little Emperor, I'm going to see Brother Jian. We will definitely be able to survive this crisis." Xiaodijan heard the words, stretched out his hand and pulled out his collar. "Don't find him. Wouldn't it be impossible to win without him?" Chen Qing wanted to refute, but seeing his cold face, he had to gritted his teeth and said, "Then you can only fight to the death." After letting go of him, Xiao Dijuan rushed forward, facing the army of Yanxian, and raised his sword. "Little Emperor, don't force me to wait." A black big palm over the sky forced it back, and Yanxian, who was obscured by the dark clouds and couldn't see his true content, said in a cold voice, and 2 red eyes shot out, "We only destroy the six-day realm, you can leave." With a fierce spit, he wiped off the blood on his face. Xiao Dijuan said in a cold voice, "The young man sent you here? So what is not, your six-day realm will definitely not be able to keep today." The leader Yinxian said coldly. What are you using to stop it? The army behind you is just for making up the number. Xiao Dijuan smiled coldly. I can guarantee that as long as you step into these 6-day realms, no one will want to go out alive. Ignoring his threat, he directly led nearly 100 of Yinxian, as the head Yinxian, to meet him. In an instant, it was capable of destroying hundreds of thousands of celestial realms, and it rose to the top, emitting extremely brilliant brilliance, bursting open before the 6-day realm. Just this shock, the entire top repair army was directly wiped out by 1/10. Every Xianxian who came to this realm was extremely cold and tyrannical at the same time. Every time they make a shot, they can directly wipe out dozens of top repairers, and countless top repairs quickly die. All kinds of powerful moves are irresistible divine punishments for the top repairers, and they can easily destroy the source just by contamination. Damn, a bunch of craps. Chen Qing fought bloody, and wiped out an immortal Yinxian with a palm. Thousands of dazzling lights suddenly condensed behind him, and a dim treasure appeared. All for Lao Tzu go to hell. He manipulated the huge treasure, like a peak, dragging the offensive of more than a dozen immortals. The thin purple robe also led less than 50 Yangxians in a resistance. But even so, it still cannot conceal the trend of decline. More than 200 Yangxians are like an incomparable arrow, piercing into the heart fiercely, unable to pull out. And as these eternal immortals continued to deepen, streams of light swept from the void in all directions. Every streamer is a fairy. Xiao Daijin's heart also sinks. This time there are more than 100 immortals who have come to the 6-day realm. They stood in the void, and then resolutely joined the battle. Nearly 400 immortals. This is a scene of destruction. The little emperor was stunned in the same place. His face was red and bloody. Mobilizing 400 immortals. Who in the entire big division can have such power? The fall of the 6-day realm is a foregone conclusion. This is no longer just a force that young Master Shan can use, and it is bound to contain forces sent by other emperors. With the participation of nearly 100 immortals in the battle, directly overwhelmed the top repair camp in the 6-day realm like a ruin. Countless top repairs died. The portal hole opened in 6 days. Chen Qing's treasure image was smashed in an instant, and various rushing powers shining into the void. Such a battle involving more than 500 Yangxians was almost the most massive battle since Emperor Zhen Wuyang established the Desai domain. Their goal is to completely destroy the entire 6 days. Chapter 4874. After withstanding the fierce attacks of nearly 20 Yangxians, Chen Qing's immortal body was almost broken. He was already shaky. 100,000 repairs are already less than 10,000. Only a dozen of dozens of Yinxian have fallen. After opening the portal of the 6 heavens realm, the Degushan realm that bears the brunt is on the verge of breaking. The various forces that caused the shock of the heavens burst out completely. The power of more than 400 immortals directly shredded the entire Degushan universe. The heavenly air transport the land plane. At this moment all turned into powder and scattered. At this moment, several figures stood outside the hall, all looking up at this scene with solemn expressions. Looking through the hazy cloud layer, looking at the continent plains, floating in the void after being shattered, it is indescribable miserable. Cui Jing's expression was a little nervous. It seems that this time it is really moving. The Gudian has been shattered. How many immortals have come here? Looking at this situation, I am afraid at least 200. Zhao Ting said in a rare voice. Much, how much? 200. Cui Jing opened his mouth, as if he had heard the most absurd words. The immortal Yen who came here may be far more than 200. Chun Qiu said at this time, and then he stretched out his palm to point to the void above his head. Sure enough, following the pointing of Chunkia's hand, streamers of various colors converged in the void, and there were no less than 300 or 400 points under the count. Each streamer represents an immortal, but in this instant, they completely annihilated the Dega Tian domain and attacked the next heavenly domain. Good guys, aren't they rushing to us here? Cui Jing looked a little ugly. Hundreds of immortals, I'm afraid we. With the dignified and deadly atmosphere, Diqing stretched out from the temple, What is noisy and rants? A good night's sleep is disturbed. Chun Qiu and others saw Di Qing awakening from sleep and felt calm in their hearts inexplicably. Although they didn't know the depth of Daiking's realm, they all breathed a sigh of relief. Cui Jing immediately said, "A total of 300 to 400 Yangtzeans, all of whom have entered the six-day realm. I am afraid that it will not be long before they hit us." Di Qing came to the outside of the hall and looked up at the sky. Sure enough, dozens of streamers had already broken through the barrier and poured into Xiaogushan. "Good fellow. It seems that those who want to kill young Master Yan are no less than those who want to kill young Master Mo." Di Qing slowly raised the corners of his mouth. Cui Jing asked, "Are we going to escape now?" "Escape? Where to escape?" Di Qing glanced at him, then looked at the immortals who were about to descend from the sky. "Wushuang has not yet returned. If we leave now, we will cause a lot of unnecessary trouble. Just stay here, kill as many immortals as you come." Daiking's golden eyes suddenly sharpened, and layers of red gold ripples surged around him with a trembling breath. Then he directly ascended to the sky. "I'm afraid it's not crazy." Cui Jing was dumbfounded. "He is not crazy, he is ready to fight," Chun Qiu said, drew a dagger condensed by power from his waist. Cui Jing gritted his teeth. "Then I will be crazy." Above the dim sky, nearly 100 Yinxian stepped into Xiaogushan at the same time. Looking at this extremely abundant universe, they didn't hesitate to directly urge the force to destroy it. At this moment, a lazy and cold voice suddenly resounded from all directions. "A bunch of unopened chops, get out!" All the Yinxian gathered here, their eyes condensed, and then looked straight ahead. Di Qing stepped into the air, but the power released by the whole body was all restrained, like the most humble top repair. Hearing this insulting sound, the leader of the old Ma Yangxian's eyes suddenly condensed, and he screamed, "I want to die!" After the words were over, a black pagoda that shook the sky and the earth smashed down from his hands. Di Qing didn't even bother to lift his eyelids. Facing the black tower that was rising by 1,000,000 feet against the storm, he made a shocking move. He raised his head, opened his mouth and directly spit out. Just such a spit, facing the wind, like shooting a divine arrow from the sun, suddenly spit on the black tower. Rumble. That mouthful of saliva exuding golden light easily smashed the black tower, and then shot at the old Ma Yinxian unabated. Chirp. With the millions of feet of black pagoda shattered, old Ma Yinxian slowly lowered his head to look at his immortal body. I saw that from the neck down, the entire belly of the fairy body disappeared, and even the fairy source was directly annihilated into nothingness. "Why, what's the matter?" Until the final fall, he couldn't believe that he was spitting to death. The sky fell into a dead silence, and all the Yinxian gathered took a step back, watching Di Qing vigilantly. "I said that you can destroy the entire six-day realm wherever you want, but here is the only way." Di Qing looked at them and said lazily, "Smuggles, did I say clearly enough? Do you need to repeat it again?" After a short period of death, a middle-aged Yinxian with a clean face and no need took a step forward and said in a condensed voice, "Who are you? We will not embarrass you." "It's not difficult for me." Di Qing raised his brows. "That's how you guys of the younger generation talk to Lao Tzu." Having said this, Di Qing directly stretched out his hand and held it in the air. Then the middle-aged Yinxian could not speak. His complexion was purple and black, and even Yanli was directly pinched out. Then his head burst open without warning, and even his entire fairy body was torn apart. "I repeat it one last time. Now I leave here. This seat will not be held accountable. If I insist on destroying this place, I will kill you." Di Qing brushed his sleeves, his face sinking like water. At this moment, all Yinxian felt a kind of supreme pressure inexplicably. That kind of pressure made them all hesitate, and for a while, no one dared to step forward. But with more and more immortals soared into this little lonely sky, and the atmosphere began to change from dead silence to restlessness. In the spring and autumn period, Cui Jing, Zhao Ting, and Wei Lijia's Yinxian also came, all looking solemnly at the overwhelming Yinxian ahead. Facing such a situation, Di Qingyan was calm, as if he didn't pay attention to it at all. But then a secret sound came from his mouth. Hey, listen to me. I haven't fully recovered yet. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with so many immortals. So if you don't scare them away later, how far will you run? Do you understand? Chun Xiu and others all turned from shock to helplessness, feeling like they were on a broken ship. Cui Jing's expression turned bitter. I put such a big aura together with you. Was it to scare them away? Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4875. The sky above the sky is all covered by the huamang of immortals, and the forces gathered by more than 400 immortals are unimaginable. The atmosphere became more restless. The more than 10 Yangtzeans in the lead also glanced at each other at this time, and then sent a tentative blow. Yen force surging, like a startling dragon violently plunging Xiang Diqing. He smiled coldly, his palms suddenly closed, and thousands of golden lights shot up, like a big net bag strangling down. The more than a dozen Yangtzeans didn't even have time to retreat, and they were all strangled by Jin Meng and turned into fans. Those who dare to take the first step die. Diqing drank coldly, and at the same time an invisible treasure that covered millions of miles appeared. All Yangtzeans were frightened, but after they looked at each other, they all released their forces in the next moment, strangling together. Diqing, who was originally extremely arrogant, saw this mighty scene and said directly, "Run!" At the last moment, it also revealed the improper bravery of Spring and Autumn and the others, and at the next moment, they turned back and ran without a trace. Catch up and run them to death. As the trembling sound resounded, the entire Shao Gudian began to fall apart. The continent plain was shattered, and the six-day realm excluding the Wanmushan, the vastest heaven outside Degushan, and Xiagushan eventually shattered. Wherever hundreds of Yangtzeans passed, Tianyu was destroyed. So far, the entire six-day realm has been damaged. His Royal Highness, go find Brother Jian. Otherwise the entire six-day realm will be destroyed. Chun Qing's face was exhausted, and he was already at the end of the force. Outside the emptiness of the six-day realm, the little emperor was totally lost. The thin purple robe also said at this time, His Royal Highness, go to the Sword Heaven official. The six-day realm is destroyed, and all the details will no longer exist. And the remaining 10 Yinxian around him, none of them dared to speak. At this time, all the foundations of the six-day realm were almost wiped out. Even if the Sword Heaven official appeared, I was afraid that it would not be able to recover. There was a ray of divine blood pouring out of the corner of his mouth without warning, and Shao Daijin's figure was shaky. The thin purple robe stretched out his hand to support him, and then handed him a square scarf. Slowly wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth. Shao Daijin's gaze seemed to become compromised. Go to the third heaven, and meet the Sword Heaven official. Where are we going to escape? There are chasing soldiers behind. Cui Jing's panting voice resounded in the void, and Chun Xiu and others followed Diqing, fleeing desperately. At the forefront, Diqing closed his eyes tightly, as if feeling some breath. Stop talking, I'm feeling where Wushuang is. Diqing said, then opened his eyes and looked into the deep void ahead. There, it was the third horizon in the next 3 days. After Shao Gudian was completely wiped out, hundreds of Yinxian horses kept running, and also followed Diqing closely, and gathered for the next 3 days. If we rashly brought so many Yinxian to Brother Jian, won't something happen? Stopping in the void of the third heaven, Cui Jing said nervously. Of course something will happen, so the top priority now is to call Wushuang out, and let's leave here together. Diqing frowned and said, You guys go in and find Wushuang. I'll stop here for a while. Chun Xiu nodded. He was not an indecisive person. Dang even soared into the third heaven. With the arrival of Diqing and the others, it was Shao Dijuan and Chun Qing who came to meet. When Chun Qing saw them, he said with joy, My dear, I know that there is nothing wrong with you. You are also looking for Brother Jian? Cui Jing greeted them. His mother, there are too many gangsters. Come here and leave here with Brother Jian before making plans. Chun Qing gritted his teeth. Just in the time to speak, Those immortals who are like Tarsus maggots also came. There are still more than 400 Yangtzeans left, and they are like the stars of the sun, and the aura that they exude is depressing to the extreme. For 100 Yangtzeans, even if you look at the entire DCU, are unimaginable existence. Excluding Dian Immortal, they are the pinnacle forces in the entire Great Division region, waving their hands to destroy the stars, and destroying the universe with their fingers, so that they were able to push the Emperor's son under the seat of Zhen Wuyang, like a dog of the mourning family, arrogant to the extreme. Let's get out of the way. I'm only waiting to destroy the six-day realm, and the rest of the immortals will not be affected. The black-robe immortal Urn, who was shrouded in dark clouds, said, "Otherwise, you will all funeral." Di Qing's face was stunned, and there was a touch of disgust in his eyes. "If I don't let it go, what should I do?" "No. Then die." The black-robe Yinxian screamed. Using his whole body as the origin, the void collapsed rapidly, and at the same time, one after another like 9 nether pythons, drilled out of the collapsed void and went straight. Di Qing strangled and left. With his hands, nearly 100 Yinxian also released a full blow at this moment. All kinds of powers that can easily tear apart the laws of heaven, accompanied by billions of rainbow shadows, fell down. Damn it! Di Qing gritted his teeth. He hasn't recovered from the loss of a true life, and I'm afraid he will be hit hard again. Xian is above the heavenly way, beyond the shackles of existence. Even the most ordinary Xian can wave to create the heavenly way. Therefore, at the moment, the combined force of nearly 100 immortals can't even bear the rules of heaven. The endless void collapsed, and the shock it caused would even twist the next 3 days into dust. It's just that the next moment, the sudden change occurs. The horrible blow that even the rules of heaven could not bear. But it has not fallen. Time seemed to stagnate, and even the collapsed void was closing. Sui Qing, who was gritting his teeth about to explode, was stunned when he saw this scene. Everything was strangely silent. Then a mysterious scene appeared, and a brilliant Tianhe, that stretched for hundreds of millions of miles, quietly floated above the void, and easily swallowed the blow that gathered nearly 100 immortals. All Yinxian looked towards the source of the river that day. I saw a spirit with his upper body naked, his body rising in blood slowly coming out of the barrier. With every step of his movement, has wisps of blood surging under his skin to the extreme. And behind this figure, there stood another figure in a black robe like a peak. A strand of ink dripped down the black robe into the void. He slowly raised his head, and a lot of blood began to escape from the original red golden eyes. Sword Heaven official. The remaining Yinxian behind Xiao Dijuan, and the tens of thousands of Ding Xiu opened their eyes wide at this moment, their hearts like drums. Xiaodigen slightly raised the corners of his mouth, and then returned to peace. Di Qing also raised his eyebrows slightly, and let out a sigh of relief. He didn't even realize that after seeing Jian Wushuang appear, he would completely relax. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4876. Streaks of blood rushed like a mountain ravine, surging in his naked upper body, as if even the void began to tremble. Jian Wushuang felt that the surging force in his meridians seemed to have reached a certain critical point, and he needed to burst out completely. The uncontrollable scorching heat seemed to make his fairy body burn completely, and the figure that resembled a godlike peak behind him was a true shadow of Yuan Jun, completely attached to Jian Wushuang's back. When the Tianhe vision disappeared, the hundreds of Yangtzeans were in shock and looked forward with lingering fears. In spring and autumn, Cui Jing and others also stabilized from the previous panic. As early as when the Yinxian army attacked the six-day realm, Jian Wushuang in the third day of the next 3 days was vaguely aware. But because he was in the Yuanjin's inheritance realm, the passage of time was different. The induction is minimal. If it hadn't been for Chun Xiu's voice, I'm afraid that the third heaven domain would be destroyed, and Jian Wushuang would wake up. Since you have come out, it's easy to handle. Shall we run away or fight? Di Qing looked at him. An inexplicably belligerent arose in his heart. Of course it is to fight back. Looking at Mantian Yanxian, Jian Wushuang had no fear in his eyes, and he even transported Yanli to the peak. The blood surging in his body is too exuberant and terrifying. It is almost different from when he has not yet gone to the third heaven. And all of this originated from the inheritance of Yuanjun. Although it took less than a month to enter the domain of Yuanjun, the time lapse inside was completely different from that of the outside world. Jian Wushuang had roughly calculated that one day is at least worth 100 years outside. In other words, Jian Wushuang has been in the field for at least 2,000 years. 2,000 years of continuous battles turned the karma that he had infiltrated in the sand demon cave into thorough blood. Yuanjun stopped killing by fighting, and was promoted to the position of dying immortal by endless killing. His way is simple and pure, with only the word killing, and he handed it to Jian Wushuang. It was 4 words. The way of killing. Right now, Jian Wushuang wants to try to loosen the bottleneck and break through dying immortal. Step forward slowly. Diqing, Chuanxiu, Cui Jing and others are no longer ready to flee. All of them follow behind him, facing the sky full of immortals without fear. Under Dian Immortal, Jian Wushuang was invincible. Between the eyebrows, a 7-star system is slowly flowing, and the true shadow of the selfless blesses its body. Pretend to be a god, Yu Yanxian shouted, and then took the lead in leading more than 10 Yanxian flying away. All kinds of overwhelming powers are bombarded, and there is even a fairy-like atmosphere in them. Jian Wushuang stepped forward abruptly, stretched out his right palm, facing Yanxian who flew over, pointed like a sword, and slashed down lightly. A scarlet sword glow, rising by 1,000,000 feet against the storm, cut the void in half, and crazily shattered. Seeing this, the Yanxian who was on the top of the front hurriedly released Yanli, trying to cut the sword light. But this scarlet sword light is really too vast and grand, and even the rules of the heavens are easily broken, and the void ripples that it drives envelop them in an instant. Puff! A total of 13 evangelists, under this 1,000,000-meter scarlet sword light, the immortal body shattered and exploded into a cloud of blood. A single sword cut easily wiped out the 13 immortals. Such a shocking scene once again stunned the Mantian immortals. They couldn't believe it at all. This guy is just the peak of immortal regeneration. So why can he kill an immortal that is dozens of times more than him in one blow? Not only did they frighten them, but even Diqing's brows jumped. He felt that Jian Wushuang's change seemed a bit too fast. When he first met in Xianzhou of Northern Heaven, he was just a fascinating evangelist until he strayed into the former heaven, fought in the heavens, and stepped into the fairyland. After these series of things, he seemed to have completely transformed into a long life. It's just that this growth rate is too fast, and even Diqing is a little moved. The sword that was cut out used the hand as the sword, but it still issued 10% of the power. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's swordsmanship and sword intent were unknowingly tainted by the way of killing, becoming bloodthirsty and bloodthirsty. The depths of his eyes were no longer pure red gold, but mixed with scarlet. Hala! It was like a pouring rain of ink, and the figure of Yuanjun behind Jian Wushuang seemed to wake up, shaking off the raindrops on his black robe. A group of bug-like guys have only eaten their luck for so many years. Before they have completely become the climate, they have gone astray. If this is the case, just stay here. As Yuanjun Jinying's dull voice fell, the originally broken void began to be covered by patches of dark red tide. Under this dark red tide, all the immortals only feel that the source of the immortal is throbbing. The force of the evolving has accelerated the circulation, and there is an uncontrollable agitation in the meridians. Boy, these bugs will be handed over to you. Only after all of them are wiped out will I recognize you. This Yuanjun Jinying, after releasing these dark red tides, exhausted all its energy, and then dispersed with the wind. Seeing that all over the sky, the bitterness of Jian Wushuang's mouth flashed away, and then became extremely cold. The next moment, facing the sky full of immortals, he actually took the lead in taking the shot. His body was shattered into the void, and 2 big palms directly covered him. The few Yanxians who were trying to stop, even just started to use their power. Their heads were shattered. Go together, slaughter for 6 days. The leader of the black robe Yanxian roared, and a long, narrow red wing shot out from his sleeve, twisting directly towards Jian Wushuang. Smugglers, Lao Tzu made you long eyes today, Di Qing shouted coldly, and at the same time millions of miles of void collapsed, and from a huge vortex, a giant claw surging with golden light descended. With the arrival of this giant claw, the entire void was completely chaotic. All the order and rules of the heavens were all in disorder, and the infinite wind surged from the broken place. Every piece of golden scales is clear to the extremely clear giant claws, gripping down fiercely, and there are immortals unable to dodge, directly destroys the source of the soul. As Di Qing joined the battle, the pressure on Jian Wushuang was also relieved. He drew the sword up, and the invisible sword in his hand had also turned dark red, due to the infiltration of killing intent. A sword shattered a middle-aged fairy source. Jian Wushuang began to kill frantically. In the realm of Yuanjun, he has fought Yuanjun non-stop for 1,500 years. For the remaining 500 years, he only did one thing that had nothing to do with kendo. He uses himself as a hammer, and everything as a sword embryo, mechanically and repeatedly doing the most primitive sword drawing and slashing, completely abandoning any sword style. And the reason why he did this was because of the truth that Ding Beichun, who had been in the sword sky day after day, who had not known how many years he had built a sword, had learned. From the avenue to the simplicity, it evolves to the complex. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4877. The initial opening of these billions of heavens and the earth, as well as how many reincarnations the universe has experienced, have long been beyond imagination. But all the avenues are pure and simple from the beginning. Swordsmanship is no exception. It also conforms to the principles of Tao Te Ching, and the various kendos, sword intents, and sword styles that are derived later are consistent with the principles of evolving to multiplication. Therefore, Jian Wushuang began to comprehend the most original true meaning of kendo, from Ding Beichun's simplest movements. And perhaps only he himself knew why Jian Wushuang did this. Swordsmanship is his foundation, his avenue. Going back to the source, and seeking the ultimate true meaning, may be able to open up a real path. He sat down with repeated and numb movements, and rushed into the Tian Yanxian alone, completely disrupting the situation. Di Qing followed closely, with 10 wings bursting out of his back, and constantly bursting out deadly golden feathers. In the spring and autumn period, Cui Jing also followed closely. A look of worry flashed between Wei Lujia's eyebrows, and then he rushed forward without hesitation. Zhao Ting originally wanted to stop him, but still retracted her palms. Looking at the extremely unbalanced situation ahead, she sighed faintly, then used her strength to join it. The 5 fairy gods headed by Jian Wushuang, and one of the 9 ranked dying gods, abruptly tore a hole in the surrounding. The 400 Yanxian camp was wiped out, nearly 80 people instantly under this rush. His Royal Highness, the 6th Heavens realm is already intact. The thin purple robe leaned over and said, "Let's do something for Jintian officials." Xiaodijin looked at the back like a god. A look of fatigue flashed under his eyes. Go. Telling. Chen Qing couldn't wait. He wanted to fight with Jian Wushuang too much. Even if the fairy body only recovered slightly, he rushed out in an instant. The remaining immortals in the 6-day realm, go and follow Jian Tianguan. The thin purple robe brushed his sleeves and said in a condensed voice. The remaining 10 or so Yanxians glanced at each other, and then gritted their teeth, and all rushed forward. With a sword slashing down the head of Yanxian in front of him, Jian Wushuang descended an ancestral technique, the heavenly gate of power. The magnificent Tianmen door opened, illuminating the entire void, and one party seemed to be carrying tens of thousands of rounds of the big sun, with a giant finger cover pressing down. Suddenly hit the digital fairy. This is the most mysterious ancestral technique that Zhou Shen has given him. It made Jian Wushuang once invincible and supreme with half a step, and it was enough to collide with the virtual and true shadow without losing the wind. But now, after entering the study of the great evolving world, ancestral technique has shown fatigue. especially in the face of evolving immortals, although it can still achieve the desired effect. But if the eternal evolving is fully protected and avoided, it can still be to offset the heavy damage caused by the ancestral technique. However, Jian Wushuang could feel that the two ancestral arts of the power world Tianmen and Tianmenji were definitely not the limit. There should be the last two styles. However, I don't know if it was because of entering the ultimate evolvement, or because of the complete dissipation of Zhou Shun's sentiment. The ancestral technique was completely blocked the ascending space, and in the end only these two types were left. Brother Sword, Chen Qing is here to help you. With a loud laugh, Chen Qing's godlike figure soared to Jian Wushuang's side. Pay attention. Yijian cut towards Yanxian, who was chasing behind him. After Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows and smiled, he continued his fierce battle. The faction of Man Tian Yanxian began to be chaotic. They were not sent by one force, but at least by the combination of two forces, and naturally began to collapse. But the 400 immortals were too vast and terrifying. Even under the combined force of Jian Wushuang and Di Qing, they collapsed without chaos, and began to counterattack. There are only more than 300 people left at this moment. If there is no pressure from Di Qing, it will certainly not kill nearly 100 Yanxian instantly. Under the cover of Yuanjin's intention to kill, Jian Wushuang completely opened the way of killing, and for a while, no fairy could get close to him. In the field of Yuanjin's inheritance, he can comprehend his killing in a short period of thousands of years, which is also a mistake. This is because once in the Sand Demon Cave, Sha Qing, the lord of the Sand Demon Cave, designed to plant a karma on Jian Wushuang. It was precisely because of this that Yuan Jun was aware of the strong blood qi hidden in his body, and directly converted the blood qi that could not be removed from Jian Wushuang's body into the meaning of killing. Only then did he realize the way of killing in just 1,000 years. Now, Jian Wushuang has 3 daos on his body. The main dao is the sword, the other 2 avenues are the way of guarding, and the way of killing obtained from Yuan Jun. The way of guarding is the way he obtained when he ascended to the of the universe. Although it is dusty, it still exists, providing Jian Wushuang with a steady stream of luck and insight. He has gone beyond the scope of the ordinary fairy cultivating, and even the fairy cultivating, who also masters the immortal style, can hardly take any advantage under his hands, and will even die if he is not careful. No one Yanxian can stop Jian Wushuang's offensive, and even more than a dozen Yanxian team members will only be defeated. Facing such an unthinkable enemy, the assembled Yanxian has become a living target instead. But this situation was reversed next. End up. A deep shout sounded all over the void, with a striking aura. And with this deep drink resounding, Dang even got away from the 60 eternal immortals, and jointly released the vast evolving power. Because Jian Wushuang and Di Qing went too far into the Yanxian camp, they were the first to be affected. The Jetian array was magnificent, and a total of 60 Yanxians formed a 6-sided array. The moment the formation was completed, everything seemed to be a foregone conclusion. Small bugs, dare you stop this seat? Di Qing was angry, and directly shook the 10 wings behind his back. Thousands of golden feathers shot out, all of them towards the big formation barrier. Zheng Clank, Jin Yu directly submerged in the barrier. Instead of breaking the barrier, it was absorbed, and the big formation grew again. Di Qing frowned and frowned. This big array seems to absorb the damage. Jian Wushuang also frowned. He didn't like breaking the formation the least. It was a waste of time and energy, especially at this critical point, which was almost fatal. There are only 2 ways to break the formation like this kind of formation, that can absorb damage and absorb transformation. One is to break through the critical point of the formation, with one's own strength to get out of the trap, and the second is to defeat the formation by external forces. But in this formation, each formation consisted of 10 immortals, and it was almost impossible to break the formation from the outside, relying on Chen Qing and Chuanxiu. Only break the formation from within. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing glanced at each other, and made up their minds. The true shadow of the selflessness reunited, and transformed into a treasure-like appearance. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4878. This is the second time that Jian Wushuang has condensed the true shadow of the selflessness. The first time to condense was to completely defeat Zhang Tianshi, the lord of the celestial sect of the immortal territory, and exploded his bitter wheel immortal style with the true shadow of selflessness. This is Jian Wushuang's second immortal style, a special immortal style independent of a little mountain and river. Accompanied by an unrestrained and wanton figure, Jian Wushuang's whole body burst into blood and energy, like the real shadow of the gods. Di Qing did not stop, and a black Wubao image gradually condensed, and it continued to expand and stretch for thousands of miles in the big formation. Chen Qing, Chen Xiu and others all backed away, watching this scene nervously. Through the colorful array, you can see a treasure image. A black crow is soaring wildly. Almost between dozens of interest rates, it skyrocketed to 1,000,000 feet. But the formation showed no signs of breaking. Based on 60 Yangtzeans, the formation is too solid. Although every Yangtzean's complexion turned red, the steady flow of energy still firmly bound Jian Wushuang and Di Qing in it. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's true shadow of selflessness has grown to billions of millions of meters, which has exceeded the height of the previous battle with Xinyu Tianzong Zhangtian, but it still failed to burst the big formation. The clear black Wuboxiang has also reached a certain critical point. Damn! These gangsters are waiting for me to go out and crush them one by one, Di Qing said with a flushed face. He had just been damaged shortly after his life was damaged, and his strength was far from recovered, so that he was allowed to wait for this formation. Besieged, Jian Wushuang's brows furrowed tightly, and if Wu Mei Jinying couldn't tear apart the formation, he might have to find another way. With the completion of the formation, the remaining 200 Yangtzean began to march again in the next 3 days of the 6-day realm. Obviously, before they came to the 6th heavens realm, they were all given orders to destroy the 6th heavens realm desperately. Just when the formation was completed, the black robe Yangtzean, who had been mysterious to the extreme, and gave orders from time to time, soared to the top of the formation, quietly condensing a dark short sword with forearm length in his hand. The little emperor, who was watching from a distance, quietly condensed his eyes, and the next moment his figure directly violent, holding a soft sword resolutely rushed towards the big formation. The thin purple robe also set off at this time, following Xiao Dijuan closely. A group of evangelists who acted as the foot of the big formation constantly exchanged positions and released the evangelists to strengthen. When the next time Yangtzean exchanged positions, a dead silence, emptiness, black and white aura quietly rose. That was Xiaodijan's immortal style. The immortal style with a full blow burst out in one of the weakest positions. It is no easy task to act as an all-out script, and it is impossible to stop this all-out immortal style. Among the 10 evangelists, 4 fell on the spot, and the remaining 6 were all hit hard. At this point, the 6 formations, under the full blow of Xiao Dijuan, crashed one. It was precisely because of this blow that the entire array was on the verge of destruction. Jian Wushuang and Di Qing, who were besieged in the formation, were also aware of them, and directly lifted the Wu Mei True Shadow and Black Wuboxiang up again, finally breaking the entire formation. You wanna die? The black robe Yangtzean holding a jet black dagger fell from the top of the big formation, looking at Xiaodijan with anger. Then his figure suddenly turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Until Xiaodijan noticed it again, the black robe Yangtzean had reunited in front of him. The long and narrow short sword that was condensed with black power fell directly and easily went into his heart. There, it is basically a place where immortals are generally condensed. This sword came rushing to kill. Xiaodijan's pupils suddenly condensed, and then slowly collapsed. His Royal Highness. At this moment, the thin purple robe was completely lost. He flew over, condensing the power of his palm, and rushing towards the black robe. The Hypo Yangtzean was also apparently taken aback. After reacting, he threw the little emperor's fairy body out like trash, and then fled. The thin purple robe caught Xiao Dijuan, and his original withered and steady face was filled with helplessness. Your Highness. My big companion tell Jian Wushuang run away. Xiaotajin reluctantly opened his eyes and fainted after speaking these last words. The thin purple robe nodded, and after holding him tightly in his arms, he flew towards Chengqing. Jian Wushuang, who had seen all this scene in his eyes, gradually cooled his eyes. Looking at the black robe Yanxian who wanted to escape, he pursued without any hesitation. It was like a sword of slaughter that was soaked with blood. No Yanxian could stop him. Di Qing followed his Jiwei Jian Wushuang, who belonged to the ninth rank Dian Immortal Strength, which was fully revealed at this moment. With a thought of mountains and rivers adding to his body, but after a few breaths, he tied the black robe Yanxian, and then stabbed it with a sword. Hey Pao Yanxian, who had no time to dodge, was directly cut off his right arm by Jian Wushuang. He was in pain, turned around and slammed out. Jian Wushuang did not dodge, and after resisting the blow abruptly, he stabbed it again. The black robe Yanxian exhaled in pain, and the sword intent contained in the invisible sword poured into his meridians, and strangled almost instantly. Damn thing, today you have one count and none will survive. Jian Wushuang said in a cold voice. The invisible sword in his hand was shaken, and Wubi's sword intent finally pulled it into powder. In the next moment, a vague voice resounded in the shattered void. What an extremely arrogant junior, both in speech and in acting style, are full of hostility. The world was silent, and all Yanxian looked towards the place where the sound was made. Di Qing's face was solemn, and he smelled a breath that only belonged to Dian Immortal. The dark red void was torn apart a crack, and then a middle-aged figure with his hands on his back came out from it. The breath surging around him was purer and more unfathomable than Yanxian. As he walked around, even the broken heavenly Tao began to slowly repair. This middle-aged man is dressed in an elegant gown, and the clean face does not need to be quite elegant. After coming here, he looked at Jian Wushuang and slowly shook his head. I don't like the hostility that emanates from you very much, but in order not to delay my time, you leave here, and I will let you make a living. Jian Wushuang raised his brows, and the corners of his mouth raised. What are you? The rather elegant middle-aged man was taken aback. Obviously he did not expect that a little fairy would actually humiliate him. When he reacted, the original elegant gown suddenly shook, and an unimaginable power beyond Yanxian covered the entire broken void. Under this coercion, all the fairy tales felt bored, the fairy source shrank, and even the radiant power flowing in the fairy body was slow to a certain extent. What an unobstructed junior boy! Since you are begging to die, I will promise you and send you to death. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4879. Dian Immortal. That is the breath that only Dian Immortal can possess. A rather refined middle-aged man, with black hair dancing wildly at this moment, layers of dark blue diamond-shaped leaves like armor, also covering his gown. All the surging power in the void poured out towards him, constantly growing. Watching this scene calmly, Jian Wushuang violently agitated a high-pitched emotion deep in his heart. Wushuang, fast back, he is Dian Immortal. Daiking's voice came from behind in due course. Jian Wushuang looked back at him and smiled slightly. I have a sense of measure. Now I need this battle to know where I have grown. At the beginning in the Divine Power universe, he was able to kill the Invincible Supreme with half a step of invincibility, trample on the snake to destroy the 8 wilderness, and fight against the virtual god. Now in Daanhuan, he is still the original Jian Wushuang, the Jian Wushuang who overwhelmed the ages. Is this guy crazy? Di Qing frowned and murmured softly. Does he not know the gap between the two? Or is he confident that he can defeat Dian Immortal? No, it's impossible. Di Qing shook his head, and he denied it in his heart. Even if Jian Wushuang's rapid growth shocked him, it didn't mean that he believed that Jian Wushuang could defeat Dian Immortal with the power of Yanxian. Even if you look at the entire Daisai area, or even Daanhuan, there is absolutely no such precedent. Between the layers of realm, there is the sky moat. Even though he was thinking this way, Di Qing still looked at the back, that was as tough as a god. Damn, what am I expecting? Not only Di Qing had such incredible thoughts, but even Yinxian all over the sky looked at Jian Wushuang with a foolish look. Yu Yinxian recognized the middle-aged man, who came to the six-day realm at a glance. He was famous for a long time, but the nine-day fairy monarch who had traveled in the big division for decades, often dueling. His deeds of fame have been heard by almost the entire Yinxian of Desiyu. The reason why Chang dueling was called the Nine Heavens Immortal Monarch is because on the day he achieved the position of Dian Immortal, he used his own power to slaughter the vast immortal realm in the Great Division. You must know that this Nine Heavens Immortal territory can almost be called. It is a superpower that ranks high in the entire Great Division territory, and each immortal territory has no less than 50 immortals. But just like this, the Nine Heavens Immortal territory was often slaughtered by one person, and none of Yinxian Dingxiu survived. And this battle was too shocking to the world and shocked the heavens. Emperor Zhen Wuyang personally ordered him to be detained and exiled to the Endless Sea for several years. After that battle, Chang dueling's name was known to Yinxian. But at this moment, Nine Heavens Immortal Monarch Chang dueling appeared in the six-day realm again, which aroused a lot of momentum. The targeted Jian Wushuang not only did not escape, but instead faced off. This could no longer be described as a worm shaking the tree and overpowering himself. To be precise, he was preparing to commit suicide without any suspense. Cui Jing rubbed his eyes vigorously and said in disbelief, "Brother Jian, are you ready to fight Dianxian?" Chen Xiu tightly held the dagger in his hand, without speaking. The young man who started from the prisoner of Montenegro in the next 3 days, and who has rarely spoken much so far, seems to have some kind of magic power to make those who follow him believe in him unconsciously, even if the goal is insurmountable. Of the sky, with one step out, Jian Wushuang's rich blood surging around his body began to be restrained, replaced by a clear and pure golden on tassel. It was as if he had entered a certain realm, and the strands of golden light began to flow between the shoulder-length hair. So brilliant that Yinxian could not look directly at its glory. Chang dueling of the so-called Nine Heavens Immortal Monarch. At this moment, the whole body of the Confucian shirt was covered by the dark blue diamond-shaped armor leaf, and his aura climbed to a terrifying state. "Junior, go to death," he said coldly, as if he had lowered his punishment. The endless void shattered, and even the dark red tide water field arranged by Yuanjun True Shadow was torn under this breath. Deep blue torrents of 10,000 feet thick and thin drilled out of the broken void, like a real dragon in the world twisted and rushed, all strangling Xiang Jian Wushuang. There are hundreds of these deep blue torrents like the great pillars of the sky, hanging from the cracks in the void, a scene of ruining the world. All evolving immortals are horrified. This is a completely indiscriminate offensive. Once it is contaminated, it will be completely destroyed. So at this moment they were in a tacit understanding, and they all retreated quickly to avoid being affected. And Di Qing and the others also held their breaths, and were extremely nervous. The blow of Dian Immortal is 10 times, or even 100 times better than that of Dian Immortal. I am afraid Jian Wushuang will have a big crisis. The deep blue torrents that destroyed the void collided with each other, and swallowed him completely. Only the whistling sound of torrents remained in each Yangxian's ears. Chang dueling looked at this scene and smiled disdainfully, the incompetent. But the next moment, a sword aura burst into the sky, and a million Zhang sword aura rushed and split, and after directly cutting the deep blue torrent in 2 sections, the smashing attack continued to Chang dueling. He raised his brows, and then pressed his finger away, with endless strength, directly offsetting a million sword energy. This scene was so fast that it would all end when all Yinxian who was watching reacted. The raging deep blue torrent dissipated, and the figure still stood on the spot, without even making any movements. The long hair behind his back moved slowly. Jian Wushuang seemed like a big day that couldn't be seen directly, and then stretched out his right hand, facing Chang Duolinji, and pointing it out. Boom! A giant finger across the sky condensed, crushing forward heavily, and wherever it passed, the void was plowed by a million-mile ravine. Chang Duoling's gaze condensed. He didn't expect this ant to be in trouble. but his hand was unambiguous, and a palm slammed out. The two supreme Yanli forces collided in a big way, and the wind and air currents swept across the void, and Yanxian, who was a little closer, was almost lifted out. Diqing brows slightly. His eyes towards Jian Wushuang's back are full of solemnity. This was only a couple of fights. Let him understand that Jian Wushuang did not do anything uncertain. And this battle with Dian Immortal, I am afraid the ending will be reversed. It is unimaginable to fight Dian Xian with Yanxian, and have been undefeated several times. At this moment, even Chang Duoling couldn't help but wonder. This is just a junior at the peak of immortality. How could it withstand his offensive and counterattack? And Jian Wushuang, at this moment, also slowly exhaled a mouthful of turbid breath. During these several encounters, he had reached the realm of Chang Duoling's reality. Diqing said earlier in the morning that Dian Immortal has 3 most important realms, which are 3 or 6 or 9 turns, and each turn is a complete transformation. However, the promotion from Yanxian to Dianxian is not directly at the beginning of the 3rd stage, but is referred to as the initial stage. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4880. The initial realm is the initial realm of Dianxian. Right now, the 9 heavens immortal monarch Chang Duoling was in such a realm of Dian Immortal, which was far away from the realm of 3rd Revolution. Rao was so, that was the real Dian Immortal, and Jian Wushuang felt an unprecedented pressure. Junior, no matter how much resistance you do, it is useless. I want you to die, and now no one can save you. Chang Duo made a sneer at the corner of his mouth, like a last pity. Jian Wushuang also sneered. Is that right? The so-called Dian Immortal can only slap? Are you going to drown me with saliva? Chang Duo's complexion was cold, and his palm suddenly reminded him, and suddenly there were thousands of dark blue beetles on his body. Every beetle is full of violent power. Jian Wushuang held high with his left hand, and a sacred mountain appeared out of thin air, and stood in front of him. Oh, and boom! Every piece of a leaf smashed on the top of the mountain, and there was a burst of explosions. He started to retreat, the galaxy between his brows slowly circling. The mountain only resisted for a moment, and then a body with supreme power violently shot at Jian Wushuang. Because the speed was too fast, when Jian Wushuang made a fight, the unstoppable force directly bombarded his fairy body. The shattered void immediately scatters layers of ripples. Chang Duoling's expression was cold, and after a heavy blow, he exploded completely in Jian Wushuang's belly. Thousands of punches in a flash. Every blow is enough to break the source of the ordinary eternal fairy. Boom! With the last punch passing through the body, Jian Wushuang's entire fairy body was punched with a big hole, and then Chang Duo made a cold smile, and hundreds of dark blue armor leaves suddenly reflected behind him, all bombarding him. The void, which was already shattered, was completely covered again by the dark blue martyrdom. Everything seemed to be a foregone conclusion, and the results were separated. Chang Duoling stepped back slowly, and regret flashed in his eyes. But the regret in his eyes had not even disappeared. A stream of light suddenly flashed out of the center of the explosion, and he rushed toward his front door and blasted over. That streamer was Jian Wushuang. The wound in his belly was far from healed, and the entire fairy body was shattered. This was the last thing Chang Duoling saw, and his face was hit by the heaviest crit in history. His eyes suddenly went dark, and then turned around. At this moment, Jian Wushuang condensed the 2 ancestral arts of the power world Tianmen and Tianmen, Jiu into his fists, and blasted them fiercely. This fist that had gathered all the power of the ancestral arts exploded in Chang Duoling's face. He smashed down with one punch. 1,000 punches in a flash. The power contained in each punch could also cause heavy damage to Yanxian. Just as Jian Wushuang was about to close his hand, a big palm suddenly grabbed his fist, and then squeezed it hard, directly crushing his fist into powder. Damn shit, who allowed you to do this? Chang Duoling roared angrily, and then subconsciously blasted his belly with a punch. But it smashed into the air, because Jian Wushuang's immortal body was completely broken at the moment, and the punch directly passed through his broken immortal body and threw into the air. The sword has no double-faced color and is cold, and the only left hand quietly condenses an invisible sword, facing Chang dueling in front of him and stabbing his fairy body fiercely. Ding, ding, ding. Invincible, the invisible sword that can sever the universe, breaks every inch at this moment, and then shatters. Chang dueling was startled at first, and then smiled sullenly. The reaction is really quick, and such an offensive can be completed in this instant. If I am not wearing a 9-day clothing, I am afraid it would be really troublesome. 9 Heavens Yishuan. Jian Wushuang's heart was stunned. He wanted to retreat, but he was still a step late. There are nearly 1,000 deep blue leaves swept towards Jian Wushuang, and then burst directly through its fairy body. Pain and unbearable pain is like worms gnawing at the heart. Jian Wushuang's dilapidated fairy body was almost shattered under the cutting of these beetle leaves. In the center of the blast, he endured the severe pain of the broken body and directly squeezed dozens of Jipin pills into his mouth. Immediately, layers of colorful halos agitated from the blast. All Yanxian watched this scene with bated breath, as if they had forgotten the original intention of coming to the 6th heaven realm. He suppressed the urge to rush to the rescue, frowning, but when he saw the figure appearing alive again, he secretly relieved, and at the same time he was a little confused. What kind of physique is this guy? The immortal body is about to be shattered, so he can live like this? At this moment, Jian Wushuang swallowed dozens of Jipin pills in one mouthful. His whole body was wrapped in layers of colorful halo, and the immortal body instantly recovered as it was before. He even felt a little hot, and the meridians seemed to be about to burst, and he needed to vent. Seeing this scene, I often make the corners of my eyes twitch. What is this guy who is just a fairy? You must know that his offensives were placed on common Yanxian, who had been bombarded into dregs long ago and died thousands of times. Afterwards, facing Chang dueling, Jian Wushuang rushed away again, and he reunited the invisible sword, releasing a sword intent that shocked the earth. Unparalleled kendo, the first style of Xinggehuhe Jianyani. Star, a sword light rising from the sky, rising against the storm, tearing apart the void, swallowed away with hundreds of thousands of feet. Such a sight made Chang dueling a little moved. Subconsciously, he no longer regarded Jian Wushuang as an ordinary Evangelion, but as an evenly matched opponent. Facing such a fencing style, his face was solemn, his left arm suddenly raised, and the hundreds of millions of dark blue stars swept away directly. My heavens and stars have changed. Even the ordinary Dian immortal can only evade. I want to see how you break it. Chang dueling looked ahead meaningfully. Boom. The void was illuminated for an instant. The star-shaped sword intent collided with the heavens and stars in disguise, and the most brilliant scene broke out in. This was their common full blow, which made all the evangelists who watched the battle become disillusioned. They couldn't believe that a Yanxian could actually fight against Dianxian back and forth, or even a big fight. How can that be? If it hadn't been for this scene, all Yanxian would definitely not believe it. Even a great Yanxian in the initial realm is enough to easily obliterate hundreds of Yanxian, which is a crushing existence. But right now, their deep-rooted thoughts are gradually being disintegrated by the figure that dared to compete with Dian Immortal. Damn, what is this guy? Dian impersonating? Looking at the scene ahead, Chang dueling's eyes were splitting, and he couldn't wait to swallow that figure alive to relieve the depression in his heart. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4881. That kind of sword intent of the galaxy, the lake and the sea, did not easily destroy his heavens and stars, and Jian Wushuang even came to him unscathed. He didn't want to believe that this guy was the realm of Yanxian. Damn it, say, are you the realm of immortality or Dian Immortal? Jian Wushuang was hot all over, and his mind was a little dizzy, as if he was a little drunk, but he still held a sword and pointed it at him. Whether I am Yanxian or Dianxian has anything to do with you. This does not prevent me from taking your life next. Chang Duo made an angry smile. Well, what an arrogant mess. Today you will never leave alive. The stars are dead. He was furious, his hands raised. Immediately, patches of nebula light up quietly in the originally broken void. In the colorful nebula, there are countless stars quietly lit up, drawing a big picture of the nebula. As soon as this nebula came out, all the fairy tales changed their colors, and then they all turned and ran without any image. Di Qing waved his hand to release the enchantment, spring and autumn and the others, as well as the tens of thousands of top repairs remaining in the six-day realm. Then, the big picture of the endless nebula in the void began to change color, like a scene of annihilation, and the dotted stars in it began to sink. Jian Wushuang was under the big picture of the nebula with a solemn expression, and then he responded. The selfless real shadow treasure phase condenses, and it soars by billions of meters in an instant, actually directly resisting the big picture of the falling nebula. Then true shadow of Wumei, who had been keeping her eyes closed, quietly opened her eyes, and Huang Xinwei was here. The falling stars extinguished directly when they touched the pale golden divine power, causing the void to vibrate. Jian Wushuang held the sword with one hand. Behind him was the true shadow of Wumei, and the front was Nine Heavens' immortal monarch Chang Duoling. For a moment, a chill rose in Chang Duoling's heart. He simply couldn't understand that when he went to destroy the six-day realm, he would be dragged down by an immortal, or even crushed. This is simply a matter of great humiliation. If it were to be spread out, it would be absolutely intolerable for him, who had slaughtered for 9 days with his own power. Therefore, there is only one solution, and that is to destroy the entire sixth heaven realm, and that immortal. Chang Duoling's eyes gradually showed a cold, dying breath, and he seemed to have returned to the day when the Nine Heavens' immortal territory was slaughtered on the eve of exile in the endless sea. The entire star nirvana map was blocked by the true shadow of Wumei, which bought Jian Wushuang time. Holding an invisible sword, he appeared in front of Chang Duoling in an instant, and cut out with the sword. Chang Duoling didn't dodge or avoid, and straightly met the blade. The 9-day clothing mysterious layer formed by countless dark blue armor leaves on his body is the supreme treasure. The origin is no longer known. It was obtained by traveling through the 10,000 realms in a dilapidated cave when he was young. Even if the Nineth-ranked Dian Immortal holds the supreme treasure, there is absolutely no possibility of breaking the Nine Heavens Yishuan. And this entire Nine Heavens Yishuan is his true support. And about these 9 days Yishuan also involved a secret. Chang Duoling slaughtered the Nine Heavens immortal territory, because the Lord of the Nine Heavens knew that he had a supreme treasure in his hand, so he fought for it. In his anger, he fought for 9 days, and finally slaughtered the 9-day immortal realm with his own power. When the Nine Heavens immortal territory was slaughtered, he was wearing such a treasure to offset all the damage caused by the immortal. This shows the mystery of this 9-day clothing mysterious. Immediately afterwards, the invisible sword in Jian Wu's hands broke again without any accident. A fierceness rose in Chang Duoling's eyes, and as he was about to take a shot, there was a sudden tingling in his neck. A sword penetrated and cut his neck directly from the middle, and the blood spurted out. The corners of Jian Wushuang's mouth quietly curled up, and while retreating quickly, his left hand withdrew another invisible sword. Thank you for your previous notification. If there is no previous reminder, I am afraid I would not have thought of cutting your neck. Chang Duoling was almost fainted with anger. He didn't expect that an immortal in this area would actually cause such a heavy injury to him. At the same time, he had lingering fears. If he didn't react in time, his head would be cut off on the spot. Jiutian Yishuan can avoid any heavy damage from the most precious treasure. This is Chang Duoling's pride. He accidentally said it, but he didn't want to be understood by Jian Wushuang, who knew everything. The sword that struck his neck almost caused him a heavy blow. The unbearable anger made him desperate. The stars are dead. The galaxy goes back. The endless fairy styles were released by him when he went crazy. The void that had originally been extinguished once again turned Star River. And Jian Wushuang's Wumei true shadow finally couldn't hold on, collapsed and collapsed. Hundreds of millions of stars have come, tearing all the rules of heaven. And there are other celestial domains that are closer to the six-day realm, which has also been affected by this. In an instant, at least a dozen heavens were wiped out. Under the dying of the stars, Jian Wushuang had to release the Yanli barrier to resist hard. The power of Dian Immortal was far beyond what he had imagined. Every dying star fell on him, enough to cause heavy damage to Jian Wushuang. He was struggling to resist, and Chang Duoling's figure appeared before him here. It's a pity that you are such a good seed. If you are not against me today, you will never be able to reach Dian Immortal in the next 5 years. But it is a pity that it will end in my hands. As he said, he stretched out his palm to hold Jian Wushuang's neck tightly. The power of his left hand condensed thousands of layers, and then suddenly slammed into Jian Wushuang's obviously bulging stomach. This punch, even the same realm Dian Immortal could not bear. But Jian Wushuang completely endured it. He looked weird, as if there was something in his throat, and then facing Chang Duoling, he opened his mouth and spit out a colorful rainbow. Chang Duoling was caught off guard, and his face was covered with something Jian Wushuang spit out. Ah. And after vomiting these things, calm Jian Wushuang seemed to be very comfortable. His legs suddenly slammed frequently, and he swept 1,000 feet away in an instant. Leaving him standing in place, the colorful shadows covering his head and face began to quickly penetrate into every pore. Then a majestic and vast unknown aura spread from Chang Duoling's body. Jian Wushuang, who had been watching this scene from afar, had a bad premonition in his heart. The things he vomited just now had been swallowed too many Emperor Pin pills before, and could not be absorbed at all for a while, so they accumulated in his belly. Never wanted to be punched out by Chang Duoling with a punch, mixed with the effects of nearly 60 Jipin pills, and spit out all his brain on his head, and then was absorbed inadvertently. With so many medicinal effects, I am afraid that Chang Duoling will be promoted to the 3rd rank. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. Chapter 4882. You know that every supreme pill is the treasure of the Emperor Six Crows. How can the pill that can be treasured by the Emperor have a common product? The energy rules contained in each of them are beyond imagination. Jian Wushuang swallowed nearly 60 pieces in one gulp in desperation. Even if he was an immortal body, he could absorb only 20 medicines. The efficacy of the remaining 40 Jipin pills is completely cheaper. Chang Duoling. Chang Duoling backed away, holding his head full of filth that he thought was actually the medicine dregs of great luck, and roared in shock. Miscellaneous, dare to insult me? As everyone knows, a good fortune has already been added. Layers of colorful ripples surged out from his body, and at the same time, there were hundreds of rainbow peaks across the void, and strands of smoke and dust formed a storm converging. Di Qing, who was watching from a distance, tightened his brows in an instant, and even Chun Qing and others felt a great crisis inexplicably. Promoted to rank 3, Wushuang is probably in danger this time. Di Qing murmured. Already in rank 9, he can naturally see the heaven and earth vision that Chang Duoling provokes. The initial realm is promoted to the 3rd rank. The universe has the same force, and the flowing great air luck adds to the body, which is the 3rd rank. He wiped off the scum on his face, and Chang Duoling, who was about to do it, also noticed her own changes, staring at a loss, and then surprised. It seems to be promoted. Jian Wushuang's brows curled together, and he felt the palpitating force fluctuations. In the initial realm of Dian Immortal, and with Chang Duoling of 9 Heavens Yishuan, it is already difficult to get to the extreme. If he is promoted to rank 3, he may have no chance of winning. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang suddenly urged himself, and a galaxy sword light surging out from behind him. Wushuang Kendo Zingehahe Jianyini the 2nd style. River. Compared with the star-shaped sword intent, the river-shaped sword intent is more majestic, capable of breaking through the heavens. Even in the face of 100,000 ancestors, it is enough to crush it, and it is the cornerstone of the entire Wushuang Kendo, but not the sharpest sword style. Chang Duoling, who was retreating quickly and was about to be promoted to rank 3, saw this scene, His face changed slightly. He felt that this sword style was even more unfathomable than before. It is absurd to be able to threaten Dian with the power of Yin Xian. Chang Duoling was furious. And with one arm stretched out, a more magnificent galaxy cover suddenly fell. The stars are dead. Countless big sun stars swept again. Jian Wushuang sat on the tide of the billion meters Jianhe River, his eyes calm to the extreme, as if he did not put the ruined stars above his head in his eyes. Then, under the gaze of all Yin Xian, Jianhe at the head of the tide just waved his hand gently. The waves are surging, the giant river is in the sky, and the endless sword intent rises into the sky, brazenly facing the dying stars. OM. The void suddenly shines, as if there are a million big suns in the sky. Everything is truly extinguished. Jing was naked. Jian Wushuang, who seemed to be coming from heaven, followed Chang Duoling. The Jian River rushed and swallowed everything in an instant. The stars died, and the shattered void returned to silence. Even the Dian immortal aura that Chang Duoling exuded completely disappeared. Only the sky-shattering, magnificent Kendo Tianhe, like a ribbon, straddles the heavens and domains, shattering all directions. This is a pure sword. There is no sword mixed with any great power. All Yangxians swallow their throats involuntarily. This sword is enough to leave the strongest stroke in their divine consciousness, and even in the endless years to come. How can I ask? The heavens and the thousands of domains, countless arrogances are shocking. Who can use this sword? Who can block this sword? This sword is too magnificent, so that it is difficult for Yin Xian who diligently practice Yanli Dao to calm down. It turns out that Kendo can still be so reckless, so vertical and horizontal. Every Xianxian present had no longer considered the final outcome of this battle. An immortal, facing a prestigious Dian immortal, not only did not fall behind, but instead used his own path to the fullest. This battle will definitely remember them. The result is not important, but it is quite important. Di Qing stared at the front closely, and his palms under the extravagant clothes clenched into fists unknowingly. Chen Qing, Chen Xiu, Cui Jing, Wei Liujia and others are all eager to rush to fight together. Zhao Ting's gaze was difficult to understand, and most of it was shocked. When the hanging river in the sky dissipated, and billions of sword intents returned to a moment, all the results would emerge. Jian Wushuang held an invisible sword with the tip of the sword pointing diagonally forward. The opposite of him is Chang Duoling, the Nine Heavens immortal monarch. Ding! With the sound of voices, the invisible sword in Jian Wu's hands shattered every inch and turned into powder. Almost at the same time, Chang Duo made the exposed fairy body shattered at the same time, except for the cover of Jiutiani Xian. Divine blood spurted out, and even the deep blue Nine Heavens Yixuan was densely covered with mottled sword marks. Nine Heavens Yixuan, really amazing. Jian Wushuang murmured softly, a ray of divine blood gushing from the corner of his mouth. Chang Duoling, who looked like a blood man, didn't even have a piece of good flesh on his face, and his only intact eyes were looking at him with a complicated expression. This situation only existed for a few dozen breaths of time, and as the circle of colorful shadows returned to one, Chang Duoling, who was almost about to fall, recovered completely in an instant. The flesh and blood is as before. The immortal body is prosperous. Even the vitality of his whole body rhythm is strong to another state. Chang Duoling, promoted to the 3rd rank. I'm really curious, how did you sway Dian Immortal with the power of immortal regeneration? You must know that between the two, there are basically two existences. I can crush any fairy with a wave of my hand, even if he is the most stunning Tianjiao in the universe. When I was promoted to Dian Immortal, I slaughtered 9 immortal realms with my own power. In each immortal realm, there were no less than 50 Yinxian, and a total of more than 400 Yinxian died in my hands. There are countless top repairs. This is the power of Dian Immortal. Chang Duoling recounted the past word by word, looking at Jian Wushuang at Yu reading www.akanshu. Calm. But today you changed my opinion. If it weren't for me to be promoted to rank 3, I'm afraid that I would have fallen under that sword. You made my heart palpitations. If it weren't for Jiutian Yixuan, I'm afraid I would be hit hard even if I was rank 3. Just one sentence for you. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang said, Say. Are you Yanxian or Dianxian? Xianxian peak. The world is silent, and often the corners of his eyes beat fiercely. Even if he heard it with his own ears, he couldn't believe it. Looking through the ages, even in the battle of Emperor Zhenliang ascending the emperor, the countless arrogances that emerged have not been legendary cross-border beheading. Please remember the domain name of the book's first publication. Mobile version reading URL. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.